And it is a live stream, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show of today's SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. We are just getting things started on this side. Well, not just. We have been getting things started, but we're sort of approaching the time where we start about 10 minutes, about 9 minutes and 10 seconds to be precise, which is not what we are, but that's me trying to be precise. Hey, chat room. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Been watching folks shuffle in. Now that we are live, let's check. Recordings are good. Before we went live, I did the podcast intro, so that's done. Sometimes I forget that one. I have to go back, turn everything back on, because I can't just record from the mic. We have to have the whole chain has to be running so that it all sounds the same. Otherwise, you get that odd thing happening. Lots of folks checking in, though. Missouri and South Africa and Sierra Leone and Fort Worth, Texas. Spain is here. Virginia has checked in. We've got Connecticut and London, which I'm assuming is the one in the UK. We've got Houston. We've got DC. We got Massachusetts is here. We got lots going on. There's Australia and Puerto Rico and New Jersey and Colorado and Birmingham, Alabama, and Virginia and Kansas and Costa Rica and Georgia. Wow, we got lots of folks checking in. Thanks for being here. There's Canada. Hey, Montreal, I see you there. Thanks for being here. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know. Hello, Saudi and New Jersey and India. Did I see India twice? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. We'll have to see how this all turns out. New York is here. Jersey's here. Malaysia, Palestine, or Palestine, depending on where you are in the world. We've got Maryland and India, and we've got Montgomery, Alabama, again. We've got Colorado Springs. There's Florida checking in. I knew you guys would come along eventually. Lots of Alabama today. Tuscaloosa checking in. That's a great city, too. Haven't been there in a while. Oh, and I'm just down the street. There's I really should get that. Not really just down the street, but you know what I'm saying. So let's do a quick check. We got a mic check. It sounds like the mic check is working. You know, I didn't check the audio output. So let me quickly flip over to audio and double check the output. That looks good. That looks pretty good. So we're going to keep it. I like it. So we'll keep it. And we've got screens up for this. We've got the Q&A is already running. So we got that. We've got other folks checking in. Oklahoma and Rome and Andromeda is here. Thank goodness. I was worried that you'd be stuck over in the Pegasus galaxy. No, you made it back local. So that's good. That's one of the challenges is just getting here. But fortunately, we had this all, of course, as a replay immediately afterwards. Stream looks good. I'm looking at data rates and cache numbers. They all look pretty good on this side, so we're going to keep that going. You know, the folks in the chat room, Squid says, why am I saying what Squid says? I can click on things now and do this. First time seeing this set up. I know your electricity bill crazy, Prof. It's not as crazy as you might think, because everything here is all LED displays. You've got now sort of the lower power for all the equipment. You've got lots going on. So I think from that perspective, we're in great shape. We got a lot of different systems here that we've slowly evolved into something that's a little more power sensitive. I won't say it cleans up the power, but it's sensitive. It's sensitive to the power. So that at least that's good. I think if I was to in fact, I really should put my meter on to see how much of this are we using. I'm probably on a normal 15 amp circuit that you would have in your home. There's nothing special here. In fact, we're barely on my UPS. We're at very low. I'm at the lowest number on my UPS. So looking at the utilization of the power, how much power we're using, that's really good. So it's probably, you would think it would be close to 15 amps. It looks like it would be close to 15 amps. It's probably closer to 4 or 5. I did the numbers on this eventually. Last time I was putting this together, I did a spreadsheet where I converted all the wattages and made sure that that I had the proper amperages to handle this, and it was extremely low. It was low, much lower than I was expecting. But we have modified things through the years. We put different lights in, we've put different cameras in, all with the idea, we put different monitors in and systems in with the idea that we're going to bring down the amount of power that's required here. It also helps if you have a power flicker, if something happens, it's good to be on an active UPS and do those types of things. So that's good. We got Super Chat already. Hey, Silius. Hey, C, who says, hey, Prof, I'm taking the Network Plus exam on the 25th. Recently started a new career in IT. Your videos have been a great help. Wish me luck. Well, you got all my luck. Go for it. Good luck on the Network Plus exam. That's a good one. If you didn't see our study group from 2 days ago, that was our Network Plus study group for the month. So that part's good. I really like if you ever work through any of these things that we work through, it really is a challenge to make everything work. Let's see if we can check some cameras. We've got a lot to go through here. I'm working through a lot of brand new questions that we created. In fact, I should probably have looked at those, but I did not. I did not look at the questions. I wrote them like a week ago and then promptly forgot all the questions. So it'll be new for all of us. I like that part of it. Security Plus or software testing, which requires less coding. Well, definitely Security Plus requires less coding because there's no coding in IT. We don't code in IT. We script. We don't build apps or modify apps or do any of those things in IT. So that part's good. That part I like. Although I've done and have had businesses where we wrote code, where we built applications, and it was great. But just not my thing. I liked IT better than I liked application development, which programming, I guess we want to say it that way. We're almost ready to go. We got a few minutes, but we've got other things popping in, like Dot Mars says, hey, Professor, passed my A Plus Network Plus 3 weeks ago. Thanks to your videos, working on Security Plus now, scheduled for April 7th. So it's coming up, isn't it? You gotta plan these things. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Congratulations on your A Plus and Network Plus. Now Security Plus. You're really going back to back to back here. That's a tight time frame. So best of luck with your studies. Let us know what we can do to help. This is why we're here. Make sure you get on the Discord and talk to other folks. There's a lot of folks doing Security Plus things out there. So that's a great place to go. And I think our Discord probably one of the best places to study, because you can find people really easily who are studying exactly the same thing you're studying. The Discord link is professormesser.com/Discord. That was easy. I'll of course be giving more information on that as we get through the beginning of this, but that's pretty nice to have that there. And folks, they are just there all the time. So it really doesn't matter what time of the day it is or where you happen to be in the world. It really works out quite nicely. In fact, we got Dylan in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Dylan's already on the Discord. He's Frog. Hey, Frog. Shout out to Professor and the 21st testers in the red team. That's got to be a good group to talk to as well. So these are the types of people we have out on the Discord. They're knowledgeable folks who know what they're talking about. And if you don't know what you're talking about, you ask the question. Other people will, and they'll chime in. I'm on there. So occasionally I will stick my head into a room and say, yes, no, maybe, and then I'll leave. So I'm not really in there bothering people all the time, but that's a good place to get in touch with me if you have a question. It's usually up on my mobile device or the screen that we have here. It usually works out just fine. We're pretty close to a live stream. I should probably start up a presentation here. That looks good, except it would be good if you notice there's a box. See that black box? That's my laptop, which actually doesn't show anything. And we're about to go live. So let's watch the laptop kick in. Let's see. And there it is. See, it all worked out. There's always something I miss. Top of the hour. Let's move over to, why did I move the brightness up? Let's move over to our keynote. My machine was nice enough to tell me that it's time to get to work. So thank you, alarm and alert. That looks good. This looks good. I think we're ready to do a live stream, everybody. Let's see if I can click a few things here and make that happen. Hello, everyone. Today is, hold on a moment, everyone. Let me do a quick check. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2023 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. This is our SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group, where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you will hopefully be able to follow along with us as we go through all of this brand new questions that I've written specifically for this study group. If you are here live, we would love it if you are able to participate with us and join in on the fun. We've got lots of different ways that you can participate. One of those ways is to go to this link. Let me put me in there. There we go. This link, there it is on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. That will get you to the Q&A that we are working on. This is also an extremely useful place if you are here and online and live and online, because you just go to that page and you just stay there. You don't have to keep flipping from one place to the other. So that kind of helps as well. We've got a number of things to go through, but before we talk about some of the introductory things, let me also let you know that there is an app that you can get for this. The app is available at your favorite app store. There it is, and it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Now, if you do all of that, either pop open a new browser window or you go to the app, there will be a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question because it's a question from yesterday or last month. I say yesterday. We just did a study group 2 days ago. But this question is from our Security Plus study group last month. And it asks, which of the following would best describe an OT DOS? An OT DOS. Would that be a power system failure, a web kernel fault, an L2 network loop, an email server buffer overflow, or a DNS server outage? And you can find and lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. For those of you that haven't been on our live streams before, we just have one rule. That one rule is that you do not put the answer in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. Instead, you follow the link that's right there on the page, professormesser.com/QA, to answer this question. And we will come back to that question in just a moment. Thanks for being here. We have really been working to try to get these study groups available to you. I know the study group this month was an odd scheduling, but I think it all worked out. When we are not here doing a live stream, all of our videos, especially our Security Plus course, is available on YouTube. There it is at professormesser.com/YouTube. And then every Thursday, we have a weekly Security Plus pop quiz question, and I can make that available to you on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. There is a pretty picture version of this over at professormesser.com/Instagram. And we also will email it to you. You can find the link to that on our website so that we can email these questions. They just show up in your inbox, and you can decide what the answers are from there. This is all about the SY0-601 Security Plus exam. We know that this exam was released in November the 12th of 2020, which means that if you had to estimate a retirement date for this exam, it will probably be somewhere around May of 2024. So these are important dates, of course, as we get closer to that retirement date. That's the last date you'll be able to take this version of the exam. But as we sit here in March of 2023, we have plenty of time. It usually, on average, takes people about 2 to 3 months to get through this content and take the exam. So you've got plenty of ramp there. You don't have to worry too much about that. So that part's good, is that right now, as we sit here, our timing is good. Now, if you're watching this video and it's March of 2024, well, then you may want to look and see if you should take a newer version of the exam or finish this study up and get all of the SY0-601 done. It's a single exam. It's 90 minutes long. You get a maximum of 90 questions on the exam, and you have to score a 750 on a scale, an interesting scale from 100 to 900. Don't worry so much about the scale. Don't worry so much about the grade. It'll all work itself out at the end, regardless of what the answer happens to be. But it's a relatively aggressive score. So we really have to know our stuff to be able to earn that Security Plus certification. The exam itself consists of different kinds of questions. Most of the exam, the bulk of the exam, is multiple choice questions, similar to the one we just had. But there are a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam that are not multiple choice. The CompTIA refers to these questions as performance-based questions, and we'll talk more about performance-based questions in just a bit. Let's talk about also on the website that every single one of my Security Plus videos is available for you to watch online for free. There's no registration. There's nothing hidden behind a paywall. These aren't parts of videos. It's the entire course. You simply go to YouTube or go to the Professor Messer website and you watch the course. That's it. There's also other things you could add on to that. Some people would like notes to go along with this. We sell a set of course notes. Some people would like practice exams. We sell a practice exams book and so much more. It's all available on our site. If you want to look at the entire success bundle, it's at professormesser.com/601SB for the success bundle. You can download all of these, including the video, including the audio files, including the course notes and the practice exams and the exam hacks ebook and everything else. It's a great thing to do. Now, we've got also this live stream that we're doing available for replay immediately afterwards on YouTube, but I also make an audio-only version available in a podcast format. If you would like to add this to your podcast listening program, simply go to professormesser.com/podcast, and you can add our A+, our Network Plus, or our Security Plus study groups, and it will automatically download those to your mobile device or wherever your podcast listening device happens to be. That way you don't have to hunt around for it and download it every month. It simply appears magically on your mobile phone or your tablet or whatever you're using. And that makes it very, very convenient. No matter where you happen to be, you'll be able to listen in to the latest study group. There's also a video replay of the study group available immediately afterwards. Takes a few minutes to process, but then it's automatically added to YouTube. One of the things you'll notice is that about a day later, there will not only be the replay available, but the replay with timestamps. These timestamps that are part of the YouTube video description are added by my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this whole thing. Hey, Lori, how's things going? This is one of the great ways to approach and really think about where you can find things, because very often you'll hear it in a study group, but you won't be able to find it later. Hopefully this can help you find exactly what you're looking for later by simply clicking the timestamp. It'll take you right to what you're looking for. And as folks have said in the chat room and elsewhere, a fantastic help. And if it's helped you, make sure you let Lori know about it in the chat. She likes to watch the chat go by as she's watching me go by at 2x speed, I would imagine, and putting those in. It really is quite a bit of help for everyone. It's nice to have those there. As I mentioned, we have a Discord that you could join where I'm always in the Discord, regardless of what's going on. And then we have a lot of other folks in our Discord, a fantastic community of people studying their A+ and their Network Plus and Security Plus. And a lot of folks just leave the Discord service there in their Discord. People who already have their certifications will see questions that you're posting, and they like to provide feedback as well, which I think is a great way to sort of give back to the community. It's all on our Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you're going to need to take this exam. You will. You'll have to take Security Plus. Fortunately, the Security Plus exam is one that has at least some options for saving a little bit of money. You could, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for your voucher, or you could go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discounted voucher. It's the same one-seat, one-take voucher that you can get on the CompTIA website, but this voucher is already discounted. You don't need a coupon code. You don't have to negotiate a number of different things on the site or add anything to your browser. It's just already discounted. You'll find it at professormesser.com/vouchers. And if you purchase on professormesser.com, I will include with this voucher purchase something you can't buy, which is my Exam Hacks ebook. The only other place that's available is with my Success Bundle. So this is something that can't be purchased individually, and I'll just give it to you because you came to the Professor Messer website to get your discounted voucher. So regardless of what exam you're taking, I have a CompTIA voucher for you. Find it at professormesser.com vouchers. Let's go through that question we looked at earlier. This question asked, which of the following would best describe an OT DOS? There are a lot of abbreviations in this exam, and this is a really good example of one of those where we sort of have to put together all of the abbreviations to determine what's happening in this question. So the possible answers on what would best describe an OT DOS or DOS is power system failure, web server kernel fault, L2 network loop, email server buffer overflow, or a DNS server outage. So which one of these would it be? Well, let's see what you answered when you went out to professormesser.com/QA and locked in your answer. Let's see what was there. Well, let's click that show results button, and you can see that 54% of you say it's a power system failure. We have 17% that says a DNS server outage. We have 13% that say it's an email server buffer overflow, and then almost a two-way tie for fourth place with 9% with an L2 network loop and 7% with a web server kernel fault. So if we were going with the majority here, 53%, that absolutely qualifies as a majority, as a power system failure. Well, I think the first thing we need to first understand is, what are you talking about when you say an OT DOS? You may recognize a DOS as a denial of service, but this is a different kind of denial of service, one that is affecting an OT. And now we have to decipher that particular abbreviation. OT stands for operational technology. So if you have a set of traffic lights that are managed in a municipality, that is something that we refer to as an operational technology. If you have a manufacturing plant, you might have a lot of different types of equipment, very large industrial manufacturing equipment, and of course, it's all networked together. That is, of course, operational technology. And for the purposes of this particular question, you might find that the equipment that creates power and electricity and distributes that electricity is also referred to as an operational technology. So if someone was to perform a denial of service attack against something that is defined as operational technology, that means the manufacturing plant would not be able to manufacture. You've got traffic lights that would not be able to work properly, or in this particular case, an electric grid. So this could take down an electrical system. We have seen cases of this already in the last number of months where people are specifically attacking the electric grid in the United States. So this is pretty timely and something you should certainly be aware of if you're getting into an electrical environment. I know lots of people that work in IT in power distribution and power facilities, and this, of course, is a significant concern. We need to protect that power grid at all costs. So that's why those of you that answered A, power system failure, you got that one absolutely right. That is the correct answer. That's what we were looking for. The other answers, web server kernels, L2 network loops, email server buffer overflows, and DNS server outages are certainly a concern. We don't want those things to fail, but we don't categorize any of those as an operational technology. So that's why, in this case, the only one that makes sense is answer A, a power system failure. And maybe you remembered that from last month. That's something that you can now take with you into the exam. And if the question comes up about operational technology, you'll know exactly what they're talking about. Let's do now something a little bit different with our questions. As many of you who have attended these before know, our very first new question of the month is a performance-based question. And as I mentioned, a performance-based question is anything that isn't multiple choice. So if there's a question that is a fill in the blank, it's a question that asks you to put things in a particular order. Maybe it's a drag and drop question, or you're pulling down in a list and selecting things out of a list. They can really ask you these questions in a number of different ways. And performance-based questions are absolutely a great way to really see if you know the material and you can't guess. You can't kind of make an idea or understand if there's really going to be a problem trying to work through this issue or making a guess at the issue, because there is no guessing. You really need to know to be able to answer these. Now, fortunately, the questions that you get in these are things that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. They're just asking you the questions in a different way. So think of it that way. This is not something that should frighten or you should be scared of, because when you walk into the exam, you will recognize all of the things that are in these types of questions. So I have for you right now an example of this. Let's see how scary this is. You'll find that's not scary at all. Our performance-based question of the month asks, provide the appropriate multi-factor characteristic for each description. So this is a fill in the blank, which normally we don't really get on our exams, but I'm giving you one on this one just because it's a little bit harder, and I want to see how you answer these. So for those of you listening in on the podcast and those of you watching, let's step through each one of these descriptions, and what I'd like you to do is simply write into the answer page what you think it happens to be. So the first is, a user traveling to another country is not able to log in. What would be the appropriate multi-factor characteristic for that particular description? Next one is, an email is digitally signed by the writer. What multi-factor characteristic is that? A user writes a check to purchase a new laptop. Back in 1992, I guess, all corporate passwords must be at least 8 characters long. What multi-factor characteristic is that? And lastly, a mobile app provides a pseudo-random login code. What multi-factor characteristic would be associated with that one? Now, I have my list of what I think they are. We're going to find out if it matches what you think they are. If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and see how well you do with this. This is providing the appropriate multi-factor characteristic for each description, which is, a user traveling to another country is not able to log in. An email is digitally signed by the writer. A user writes a check to purchase a new laptop. All corporate passwords must be at least 8 characters long, and a mobile app provides a pseudo-random login code. Now, these are not as obvious as perhaps you may be expecting. So you really have to read into these questions to see what are they working to pull out, and what am I supposed to recognize, and how am I supposed to respond to these types of questions. So hopefully this should get your mind thinking first about what are all of the multi-factor characteristics, and then how would we plug them into this particular group. Now, one of the things that's really helpful here, and I will keep going back to this over and over and over again, to the point that you'll just be tired of me telling you, is that you really need to get a copy of the exam objectives. They give you a list of all of the multi-factor characteristics, which makes it easier on something like this where you have nothing to go on to really put them in, really figure out what they happen to be. So it might, not that you should do that now, because that would be cheating, but you should absolutely reference back to that when we are done with this study group. That might be very helpful. I think as we go through and start understanding more about these characteristics, these will become easier and easier and easier for you to answer. Let's see. How do you get the exam objectives? I'm so glad you asked. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and click the link to go over to the CompTIA website and download the latest version of those exam objectives. Let's see how you did with this one. A number of you have locked in your answer on this one. So let's step through each one of these and let's see if we really understand what the right answers are. So we'll start with the first one at the top. A user traveling to another country is not able to log in. What multi-factor characteristic is at play here? While you're in another country, it has recognized that you are not in the country that you should be in, so it's not going to let you log in. That's clearly somewhere you are. Somewhere you are is the multi-factor characteristic we were looking for. Let's do the next one, which is an email is digitally signed by the writer. That way, when you receive the email, you know it really did come from the person that says it, they sent it, because it's digitally signed, and the only person who could digitally sign it is the author of the email itself. That multi-factor characteristic would be someone you know. Someone you know is a relationship you already have. Well, I recognize that person, therefore I can have a more of a trust to the things that I am reading in this particular email message that has been signed by that person. The next is a user writes a check to purchase a new laptop. And of course, as you're writing a check, by the way, for those of you that are watching, checks are paper things that you would write on to tell people that you will give them this much money in return for them showing this check to your bank. I know it's something you should definitely Google that later. So when somebody's filling out a check, you sign it at the bottom. You put your signature on it, and when you sign the check, that is the proof that you were the one that wrote the check. No, really, that really is how we do it. We put the signature on. It proves that. So that's something you can do. And a signature is a very good multi-factor characteristic for someone trying to determine is that you or not, because we can have a specific signature that is very difficult for other people to use. Now, obviously, that shouldn't be the only thing that is checked, but that is a perfectly valid multi-factor characteristic, and we associate that with something you can do. Next on our list is all corporate passwords must be at least 8 characters long. That's probably a pretty good corporate edict from the security policy perspective. A nice long password is something you really would like to have. From a multi-factor perspective, a password is something you know. The password ideally is not written down anywhere. It's not available to view online because once you set your password, it's all hashed, probably salted as well. So you can't look in a file to see what your password happens to be. That's why when you call and they say, we're going to need your password to do this, you're thinking, but you're the person who manages the system. Yeah, they are, but they don't have your password by design. That's the way it's supposed to work. And something you know is certainly associated with a password or something that only would be inside of your brain. And lastly on our list is a mobile app provides a pseudo-random login code. You've probably seen these where you put in your username, you put in your password, and then you put in a code that is provided to you, usually from an app that is on a mobile device or with a physical dongle that you would push a button, it would give you a code. Those are something you have because you have your mobile phone with you to give you that pseudo-random code, or you have the dongle with you to give you the pseudo-random code, which means that if somebody did have your username and password, they still would not be able to log in because they do not have that physical device that you have in your hand. That's the beauty of it. So if we break these down, a user traveling to another country is not able to log in. That's somewhere you are. An email is digitally signed by the writer. That is someone you know. A user writes a check to purchase a new laptop. That's something you can do. All corporate passwords must be at least 8 characters long. That's something you know. And then a mobile app provides a pseudo-random login code. That is something you have. All of these characteristics are important to know about. Some of them are factors. Some of them are simply characteristics of these factors that we need to know. So absolutely become more familiar with these. Make sure you know about these particular descriptions of these multi-factor characteristics. They are all in the exam objectives, as I mentioned earlier, and you should absolutely go look at what all of those might be. I want to say congratulations in the chat room to Cap Kabui with not only a $2 super chat, but I think more importantly, Cap says, "Hey, Professor, thanks for all. I passed my SY0-601. Congratulations on your new Security Plus certification. Thank you for the super chat. We're so glad when people are able to give us feedback about passing their exams, what they're doing next, those types of things. We love to see it. And congratulations. Thanks again for your support as well. Also want to thank Martin in the chat room with a $50 super chat who says, "I passed Security Plus last week. Your content was a big part of my success. Keep helping us." Well, I'll keep doing this till you're just sick of it. Until you're tired of me, you want to throw it out, just keep eating them. We'll make more. That's the idea. So we're always looking to make more and more and more content. So congratulations, Martin, on your Security Plus certification. Thank you also for the very generous super chat. These super chats are not required, but they absolutely are appreciated. And all of this goes back to keeping the lights on and keeping the network running and keeping everything else where we would want it to be. And then lastly, I want to thank Samuel in the chat room with the $20 super chat. It says, thanks, Professor. Just passed my Security Plus last week. This is great. So everybody who's passed their exams, congratulations. And for those of you working towards passing your exam, it can absolutely be done. These are great folks to pull from. And we would love it, those of you that have passed your exams, we'd love for you to hang out in the Discord every now and then because there's always some kind of question coming in. And those of you that have already been through it, for some reason, there's just that recall, it comes flooding back, and you know immediately what people are working on. So thank you also, Samuel, for the $20 super chat. So generous, all of you. Thank you so much for your support. Let's do some more questions. I've got a multiple choice question to go through. This question asks, a company has documented a unique method of manufacturing their products. Which of the following would best categorize this data? Would it be proprietary, PII, unclassified, PCI DSS, or PHI? A company has documented a unique method of manufacturing their products. Which of the following would best categorize this data? Is it proprietary, PII, unclassified, PCI DSS, or PHI? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to instead pretend we're in the exam. We are locking in our answer on the exam page, and we'll have to see what these answers might be as we step through them. Also, there was a question earlier that you'll notice a lot of my multiple choice questions that I write, not only for the study groups, but also for our daily and weekly pop quiz questions online, usually have 5 answers associated with them. And the 5 answers are very useful when you're trying to figure out what the answer is, because I try to make it a little bit more difficult with those 5 answers that we put there. For the bulk of the exam, most of the questions that you get that are multiple choice questions will have 4 possible answers associated with them. And those 4 possible answers make it a little bit easier when you're in the exam. So what I'm trying to do is make your decisions a little bit harder now, so that when you get to the exam, it'll be a lot easier when you start working through those. Now, that's not to say that that's all you will get on the exam. There are some questions on the exam that have 5 answers, or 6 or 7, and you have to select 2 of those or 3 of those on the exam. So there are a number of those. It's not very common on the exam, but there are still those types of questions on the exam. So you'll never know what you might run into as you step through all of these. So if that's the best hint I can give you, is take a guess. And in this case, it's a 20% chance of getting it right. On your exam, it may be as much as 25% chance of getting it right, even if you know nothing about the question or any of the answers, which can sometimes be a problem. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a company has documented a unique method of manufacturing their products. Which of the following would best categorize this data? Is it proprietary, PII, unclassified, PCI DSS, or PHI? And we can see that 87% of you say the answer is proprietary. But is this one of those where we all think it's proprietary and really it's something else? Because it's all single digits. It's almost a 4-way tie for second place between PCI DSS, PII, unclassified, and PHI. Well, this goes into the idea of data classification. And if you have data that is proprietary, then this is data that is probably something only available in this organization. It probably has some type of trade secret that you would not want other people to know about. And it's something that you probably won't find if you go to another organization. You shouldn't find it if you go to another organization. There have been significant lawsuits when you found proprietary information that was written by a different company inside of your organization. Something that the folks in law don't like it, and probably more importantly, if you're a public company, the folks at the SEC certainly do not like it. That's the Securities and Exchange Commission here in the United States that manage and administer all of the laws associated with a public company trading their stock. Obviously, stealing from another company or obtaining information that is proprietary to another company is a pretty big deal. There's lots of great stories about that. I think the one I'm thinking of is either in the Coca-Cola versus Pepsi wars. One of those companies was handed secret information from the other company. They didn't open the package and instead informed the authorities. And the authorities came in and arrested the folks that stole the data. And nobody really had anybody else's information, which in the world of business, that's especially public companies, that's the way you handle it right there. Pretty important. There are other types of data categorizations, of course. The classification of PII stands for personally identifiable information. So if the data is something that can be tracked or associated with an individual, it can be directly matched with someone. It's your name, it's your address, it's your phone number, it's your social security number. Those are personally identifiable information data. And then if it's something that's related to healthcare, which is a completely different set of data, but certainly data that's just as important and just as important to keep private, is your protected health information, or PHI. So that's kind of nice to be able to categorize things this way and know where the data sits. You may get questions on your exam about any of these types of data categorizations, so make sure that you are aware of them. Now, there were a couple here that we have not covered already. We covered PII, we covered PHI. We did not cover unclassified. That is commonly used in more of a governmental or military scope, but it can certainly be used with private companies as well, where you might want to categorize information as unclassified, which means pretty much anybody can look at that data within your organization, or classified, which means only certain people should have access to that data. And then lastly, we have PCI DSS. The payment card industry's card security is so important. They have a set of rules and regulations that they require people who are storing credit cards to abide by, and that PCI DSS is directly associated with those. We have a whole nother set that we talk about in our videos that describe all of the PCI DSS, the PII, the PHI, and everything else that you see here. In this case, because the data is within this company, it's unique to this company, and no one else should gain access to it, we would put that squarely into the category of proprietary, just as 88% of you did as well. Let's do another question. Let's keep going with these multiple choice questions. This next one asks, a company, let's see, I've got this next one here. A security professional has received documentation containing a common vulnerabilities and exposures number. Which of the following would best describe this number? Is it, here we go, open source intelligence, automated indicator sharing, advanced persistent threat, vulnerability feed, or request for comments? A security professional has received documentation containing a common vulnerabilities and exposures number. Which of the following would best describe this number? Is it open source intelligence, automated indicator sharing, advanced persistent threat, vulnerability feed, or request for comments? You think you know the answer? Follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Hopefully that will give you an idea of what you can put into the list. Hopefully you're familiar with these as we go through them. So I want you to go through and kind of break down what these might happen to be. In the meantime, I want to thank Stacy in the chat room with the $100 US super chat. Stacy says, thank you for all your material. So far this year, I've passed my A+, Network Plus, and about to take Security Plus. Your videos and study groups have been invaluable. Thank you, Stacy. I'm glad we were able to help in a little way with your A+, Network Plus, and now Security Plus. Obviously, you're the one that has to do all the hard work. So congratulations on those first two. I think your Security Plus is really in the bag. You've got the whole system down at this point. And thank you for the $100 super chat as well. We don't take those just sitting down. It's always important. And we really like when someone is able to give back and kind of help keep all of this going. So thank you so much for that as well. This particular question is a pretty good one because it does break down for you a lot of different topics. And one of the things I like to do on my study groups is give you answers that are things that could be real. These are all real items that come from the exam objectives. So you really do have to read through all of them to figure out the details. So make sure you read through what all of these might be. And if you don't recognize one, make a note so that you can go back to your studies later and look up all of those. That's incredibly important that you know everything that's listed in those exam objectives. You could get answers with any of these. So a number of you have locked in your answers. This one came pretty quick. So let's see how you did with this one. The question is, a security professional has received documentation containing a common vulnerabilities and exposures number. And since we're here at the end of the question, some of us refer to this as a CVE number. You might have even heard of that. Which of the following would best describe this number? Is it an open source intelligence? Is it automated indicator sharing? Is it an advanced persistent threat? Is it a vulnerability feed, or is it a request for comments? Let's see how you answered on this one. Our results show us that 51% of us, we hit just above the majority there, say it is a vulnerability feed. 23%, almost a quarter of you, say that's open source intelligence. 14% say an automated indicator sharing. We got 10% say it's an advanced persistent threat. And then 3% say it's a request for comments. Now, those of you that kind of track these CVEs are probably very aware of these. This is what in the industry we are constantly going back and referring to. These are incredibly important databases of information because they will inform you, in some cases rather proactively, but in real terms, it's a reactive notification that a vulnerability has been found inside of an application or service. So anytime you see something from the National Vulnerability Database or something called a CVE data feed, those are available in different places, are things that can give you insight into where vulnerabilities might be. So for example, when you get Microsoft's list of all of the things that have been released this month as patches for an operating system or Microsoft software, one of the things they'll put next to it is the CVE associated with this particular vulnerability so that we can all track it. And that way, when you refer to this particular patch or this fix, you can also refer to what CVE this is addressing. That becomes really important because you might get you might do an audit in your organization and it might tell you that, oh, we've found a problem related to CVE 2023-1146. And then you have to figure out why that particular software was not updated, go back to the software manufacturer and say, we're still vulnerable for CVE 2023-1146. And they'll go, oh, we have a patch for that. Oh, you have the 1146, here's the patch for the 1146. And they'll be able to at least give you the patch, and you know it's the right patch because you're all using the same CVE numbers. We also have teams of people that are checking these and managing them. So being able to have all of this here that we can all address with a similar number, we can all track it in a central set of databases, becomes really important. So that's pretty nice. People really like the pictures that I put on the slides that I make for this course. That's feed. It's a vulnerability feed in this particular case. It could be a horse feed. It could be pig feed. It could be dog feed. But it's a vulnerability feed. That's what that is. Those of us in the South, we know what we're doing. That's go down the FRM, pick up some deer feed, put it out there, maybe put it into your, put it out in the middle of the field. We've been there. We know how this works. Vulnerability feed is indeed what we were looking for. 50% of you got that one absolutely correct. That's what we were hoping for. Now, 23% of you say it's open source intelligence. And what you'll end up finding is that the CVEs are usually things you don't know about until they are released as a CVE. You didn't know that vulnerability existed in Windows. You didn't know that there was a problem with that particular version of software that we need to patch. And the only reason we know is that it was released. Usually it's because someone found it within the company that makes the software, or a third party discovered the vulnerability, informed the manufacturer of that software. They created a patch, and that's why when you see these patches come out, they'll often say, we found this problem internally, or this problem was identified by this particular researcher. And usually there is a system in place where that researcher will be financially compensated for finding that particular bug. So that's right. People can make a decent living. If you're really, really good at finding software bugs, you can go take that bug bounty and put that in your pocket if you're the first one to find it. Oh, but it's not open source. This information is not something that you would consider to be publicly available for anybody until they are finally releasing these particular vulnerabilities into the database. And although you could argue that the database itself has some open source capacity to it, that wasn't the question. The question asked which of the following would best describe this number, and a vulnerability feed better describes a CVE than open source intelligence ever would. You've got other options here, like an automated indicator sharing. That's a way that we could share information between either different people inside of our organization or between organizations. That doesn't apply here because we don't share the CVEs. We share the indicators that someone is trying to attack or reach that particular vulnerability. We have advanced persistent threat, which certainly describes the more advanced attacks that someone might have. It is said, and probably pretty accurately, that when someone discovers that someone has been in their network and there's been a data breach, usually they've been in the network not for hours or days. They've been in the network for months, collecting information, finding their way around, looking for the data that they need, and just simply quietly, almost invisibly, going from system to system to find something that's useful. We refer to that as an advanced persistent threat. That's one type of advanced persistent threat, certainly. There are other types as well. And then we have a request for comments. Requests for comments are incredibly useful. There's a whole set of RFCs on the internet. And if you notice that a lot of the things we do today with protocols and the way we use our networks are well documented into something called a request for comment, which is kind of a funny name to call something that's a standard that we use, but it's the name associated with the first request that is made of people saying, here's a new protocol we would like to use called TCP. So this is how we see TCP working. If someone has comments or would like to participate in the creation of this TCP protocol, this is the time to do it. And eventually we go through the process of collecting questions and comments from folks, and then finally creating a final version of that standard. And we publish that standard as an RFC number. We still call it the RFC, even though technically they're no longer requesting comments for TCP, just so you're aware. But we can go back and see exactly the way things are supposed to work. And that's the important part, because if somebody's arguing about TCP is not supposed to do that, no, TCP is supposed to do that. And you can figure out, is this a poor implementation of TCP, or is it really following the standard? You go back to the RFCs to be able to do that. In this particular case, we want to know about CVEs and how they are best categorized. In this list of 5 things, they are best categorized as a vulnerability feed. 50% of you got that right. We did have, by the way, folks talking in the chat room. I offended the folks in the Midwest, the hunters in the North, the hunters in the West, all of us. I got you. We're good. So you're absolutely in that list. So a number of us do recognize that that's bag feed. That is not corn. That is not corn for deer season. I'm not sure what that is. Can we zoom in on that a little bit? What do we got there? Is that the little bit of wheat? Is that what we got? So we got some stuff in there. We got lots to work through. But the vulnerability feed is absolutely a CVE. And if you don't keep in touch with what's coming out with the CVEs, you should absolutely go back to these URLs. If it's not in your bookmarks, bookmarks are things that we put in a browser to identify it so that we can find it later. And what it ultimately does is create a huge database of things we can't find later. So put this into your huge database of things that you can't find later. The National Vulnerability Database at nvd.nist.gov. So incredibly important. Make sure you're familiar with that. It was wheat, wasn't it? I think it was. There's a lot that is in this Security Plus exam. It is a huge exam, especially as compared to A Plus, Network Plus, or Security, or other security exams that you will run into. My Security Plus course, 177 videos. That's a huge course, and it is over 21 hours of information. It's pretty big. I was really surprised when the 601 came out because it's effectively 30 to 50% larger than the 501 was. So it is an extensive set of exam information that you will need to go through. Everything from network design to protocols, encryption, VPNs, mobile security, standard security policies, and on and on and on. So much more. There's a lot there. And one of the things that may be difficult for people is to watch 177 videos. I almost didn't watch 177 videos, and I'm the one that made the 177 videos. So what I thought would be good is, so those of you that just want an overview or a summary of everything in the videos, I've got a set of course notes for you. These course notes are available in a printed form. This is the printed version or physical edition of the course notes. There's also a digital edition of the course notes. I have those on my screen right here. There they are. That's the PDF. So it's a PDF, which means you can put it on any of your devices that may be out there. It becomes incredibly useful to have these on your devices so that wherever you happen to be, we'll go back to this, wherever you happen to be, you will be able to get the information you need to study for this exam. It, of course, doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace watching the videos, but lots of information that's in there. As we step through, let me bring up the course notes again, just to give you a feel for all of the text, the graphics, the diagrams, the charts, everything in my videos that you're desperately trying to write down and your hand is cramping up, it's already in here. You could already have the course notes, and you would have all of this at a glance and available for you. This is on my website, along with my practice exams, my success bundle, and so much more. You can find it at professormesser.com/601CN, and it's a great way to support what we do here on the website. So another one of those that you can work through and think about for how do I study all of these different things. That is a bit of a challenge. Before we go to the next question, I want to thank Michael in the chat room who says, thank you, Professor Messer. I completed both the Network Plus and Security Plus this year with no prior IT experience. That's the way you do it. Your videos/study groups were a huge help. I hope this help keeps the lights on, keeps the crazy experiment going, because Michael added to that a $50 super chat. It sure does, Michael. Thank you so much for your support. Congratulations on your Network Plus and Security Plus as well. And it does. This is what we're trying to do here, is just sort of keep the whole process going. And we can't do it without your help. And so thanks so much for your assistance there and your support with that $50 super chat. That is all of you that have the super chats in here. So we're so appreciative of it. It does really help keep these things going here. And there's all new things coming out, especially from a Security Plus perspective over the next year or two. So keep your eyes open for all of those. Before we go to the next question, real quick, because it's a breaking news, Isaiah in the chat room says, just walked out of my Security Plus and passed. Used pretty much only your resources. Thanks, Professor. That's timely. $10 super chat along with it. Thank you, Isaiah. Congratulations on your Security Plus. That's got to make you feel good. Going into Friday and the weekend. What are you going to do all weekend? You're not going to study anymore for your Security Plus. It's going to be weird. So that sure is appreciated. And congratulations on your brand new Security Plus. Also, I want to thank Emilio in the chat room with a $4.99 super chat who says, grateful for study materials provided. Passed Security Plus exam with your help. Now working on Network Plus. Thanks for your support. We're happy to help in whatever way we can. Thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. Let's do another question. I promised you one. There it is. This question asks, a point of sale terminal is transmitting information to a processor to validate credit card information. Which of these would best describe this communication? Is that tactics, techniques, and procedures? Is it vulnerability scanning? Is it data in transit? Is it DNS sinkhole? Or is it security orchestration, automation, and response? all real things. A point-of-sale terminal is transmitting information to a processor to validate credit card information. Which of these would best describe this communication? Is it tactics, techniques, and procedures, vulnerability scanning, data in transit, DNS sinkhole, or security orchestration, automation, and response? All real things. Didn't make up any of those. If you think you know the answer, please follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. See what it happens to be. While you're doing that, I want to thank Jamin in the chat room with the 22 Canadian dollar super chat. The Canadians checking in. Got to let Mrs. Professor Messer know. Those of you that have sort of followed along with us in the past, you know that the Mrs. Professor Messer is Canadian. I am not, so we have this mixed marriage. It's a little bit of a challenge, but I think hockey is the one thing that kind of brings it all together for us. So thank you so much for the $22 super chat. Jamin says, I'm just joining the bandwagon, also past Security Plus and Network Plus cause of you. It wasn't cause of me. It's because of you. We just helped a little bit. We're happy to do that. So that may help you as well. Also want to thank Emilio in the chat room with $4.99 super chat, who says, grateful for the study materials provided. Past Security Plus exam with your help. Congratulations also. Now working on Network Plus, which is also a great certification to have in your pocket. Anything with networking is always good to have in your pocket. And Emilio says, thank you for your support. You're absolutely welcome. So happy to do it. Who is my hockey team? It's whoever Mrs. Professor Messer says my hockey team is. That's who it is. We have this. Oh, so do we do a U.S. team? Do we do Boston? Do we do a New York team? Or are we doing Canadians? Are we doing something north of the border? So we have all kinds of arguments and we sort of make fun of each other that way. But it's all in good fun, and it at least gives us something to argue about that at the end of the day doesn't hurt anybody. So that's always good too. We never fight about anything, really. You want to watch this? Yes. You want to go here? Sure. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple process. I got problems. That's not one of them, thankfully. So let's see how we do with this. Speaking of problems, let's see how we do with this question that asks, a point-of-sale terminal is transmitting information to a processor to validate credit card information. Which of these would best describe this communication? Is it tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTP, as we say in the industry, vulnerability scanning, data in transit, DNS sinkhole, or security orchestration, automation, and response, or what we refer to as SOAR? Let's see how you answered this one. 77%, a pretty strong number, say it's data in transit, but 17% of you say that it's SOAR. We also have 4% that say tactics, techniques, and procedures. I think some of you have maybe even heard of that one before. 1% say DNS sinkhole, and then nobody said vulnerability scanning, probably because you knew it couldn't possibly be vulnerability scanning. Anytime we're sending data from one device to another across the network, when it's moving across the network, we refer to that as data in transit. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as data in motion, although it's probably not the best description either of those. It is transiting. Is it moving? Well, I guess it is. So both of those would technically apply. I think that would be great. Data transmitted over the network as it's going through switches, as it's going through routers, it's going across a WAN, are all places that we need to think about our security posture. Are we encrypting this data as it goes across the network as it is in transit? And how are we encrypting this data in transit? All of these are incredibly important considerations, especially when we're trying to protect the data that's going by. Another way to protect it would be a firewall or an IPS. That's another good way. And obviously, if you're encrypting the data, you're probably using something like HTTPS, which takes advantage of transport layer security, or TLS, what we commonly simply refer to as SSL, even if it is not SSL. And then we have IPsec, which is another common VPN type. These are all ways to protect data that is in transit. So if you are somebody who is sending information, this happens on the Professor Messer website. You go out to my website, you want the course notes, you want the practice exams, you want to purchase those, you put in credit card information. That credit card information is sent to a credit card clearinghouse. Technically, you're putting it in on the credit card clearinghouse. As it's going across the network, it's in transit. So is it protected? Absolutely. Is everything encrypted on my site? Yes, it is. Do I store any credit card information on my site? No, I do not. I don't even see your credit card information on my site, and that's by design. You'll notice every time you purchase something on my site, I redirect you over to the credit card clearinghouse. They are PCI DSS compliant. They will make sure that all of your data is secure. All of that is encrypted and stored in an appropriate way, because I've audited that particular organization to ensure that it is stored in that way. And that is at least as much trust as I can put in any organization. And as you're sending that to the organization, it is in transit. You're sending it across the network. That is what we would choose in this case, is answer C, data in transit. 16% of you say a security orchestration, automation, and response. Commonly, this is a piece of software or a suite of software that works together to automate the identification of security events and to automate the response to potential security events as well. This is often simply abbreviated as SOAR, for Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response, SOAR. We also have tactics, techniques, and procedures, which tend to describe the way that someone may be attacking your network and how you may respond to that attack. We often talk about, what TTP would we use in that scenario? And we describe the process that we would go through to approach an attack of that type, knowing what the tactics, techniques, and procedures might be. We also have 1% that said a DNS sinkhole. DNS sinkholes are ways that we can take a known vulnerable or known bad DNS, and instead of allowing users to visit that DNS, anyone making that DNS query is automatically sent to a sinkhole. They are either sent a DNS that is going to give an IP address in response that is not vulnerable, but more often it's one that simply stops the communication, sends that data into a nowhere land, so the data goes nowhere. You are not able to connect to those malicious sites because you're not able to perform a DNS lookup to those potentially vulnerable sites because we've set up a sinkhole for you. Another nice thing about that, for those of you that are security professionals, is now you have a log of all of the vulnerable DNS sinkhole attempts that have been made, and you can go through that list and see who might already be infected on your network. Even though it wasn't able to communicate to the malware, there was the attempt to communicate to the malicious site or to the malware. And that may be malware that's running on somebody's workstation. So have a look at that on your DNS sinkhole. And then finally, a vulnerability scan is a scan that determines if certain software running on your system, either an application, a service, an operating system, or anything else, may be vulnerable. Those are those monthly updates from Microsoft, are very commonly identified by somebody performing a vulnerability scan and saying, oh, you haven't done your updates yet. So we can find vulnerabilities that may be already existing that everybody already knows about. That's where we really focus for vulnerabilities, but it doesn't talk about data going across the network. In that case, data in transit is the best description, and 79% of you got that one absolutely right. If you're someone who is wanting to watch these study groups either live or on demand, and you want to get a webinar category CEU because you're collecting CEUs either to renew your certification, or you might even use these CEUs for some third-party function. One of the way that you can get an email from me that has been digitally signed that states that you were here for this 1-hour webinar, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, and you can click on the link for Contact Us. Contact Us brings up a form where you put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put March 2023, and then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month: tactics, techniques, and procedures. Tactics, techniques, and procedures are the super secret code words of the month. Again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address on the subject line, put March 2023, and in the body of the message, put the super secret code word, tactics, techniques, and procedures. You can also put anything else you would like into that list because I read through all of those as we're going through them. So that's another way that you might want to send information to me, and then it takes me about a week or so, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, to be able to send you back the email that says you must have been here for this 1 hour because I received the email from you with the super secret code word of the month. Another great way to earn a little bit of CEU while we're here kind of having fun with Q&A. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but I got more questions for you, so let's just keep this going. I've got another one for you. This question asks, a company is using a cloud-based service to provide centralized authentication for all of their users. Which of the following would best describe this service? Would it be CompTIA, SED, ALE, or IDP? Again, with the abbreviations. The question again, a company is using a cloud-based service to provide centralized authentication for all of their users. Which of the following would best describe this service? Is it CompTIA, SED, ALE, or IDP? Which one does it happen to be? Now, if you know the answer, or even if you don't, you can still lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. That's a great way to determine what this might be. All of those abbreviations, by the way, real things you should know for your Security Plus exam. If you don't recognize one of them, make a note so that you can go back and write in what you think that one might be. Other folks are asking, especially we talked earlier about the Contact Us link that is at the top of my website. That is a great way to send me information. If you have a question or anything else you want to do, just click Contact Us, which is really contact me. It comes directly to me, hits me in my phone, wherever I happen to be. I can't get away from it. So that's a great way to do it. If you're already someone who has course notes, practice exams, or any of our other training materials, you can also open a help desk ticket from inside of your account. There's a ticket list in there. That's another great way to get in touch with me, especially if you have questions about those. So absolutely become familiar with those options. Either one of those gets to me, though. I'm pretty accessible. Some people like to send me a message on Discord. Some people like to go to the Contact Us link. Some people open a ticket. I get it regardless. I know where everybody's typing these in, so that's not a problem. More than happy to take your questions wherever they happen to come from. So feel free to punch those in. I want to thank Aqua in the chat room with the $4.99 super chat, who says, I just passed Core 1 of A+, got a field service tech job fixing printers, everyone's favorite technology, and it's all thanks to your videos. Thanks. You're quite welcome. I get a good feeling when I see people getting into field service, because that was one of my very first tech jobs, was hopping in the car in the morning, driving all over South Florida in Dade County, Broward County, Palm Beach, and I would go wherever I needed to go to fix the printer, to install the memory, to upgrade the hard drive, whatever it happened to be. That was my job, and I was happy to do that. I learned a lot in that field service job. You're absolutely going to as well. So congratulations on that. And I also want to thank Will in the chat room with the $10 super chat, who says, thank you, Professor Messer, for all the knowledge you share with us. I was hoping you could help me in choosing the best laptop that will help me become a better cybersecurity student. Oh, this is a dangerous question. Let's take that in the after show, because I have advantages, disadvantages, and things to talk about on the laptop sides. Coming from someone who was a cybersecurity systems engineer, I will tell you what we used for laptops exclusively and why, coming up in the after show. See, how's that for to hook you in? Now you have to wait. At the time, folks in the chat room are correcting me that no, you didn't go around Dade County. You went around Miami-Dade County. No, I did not. I went around Dade County. This was before the name change. So it was back. There were large dinosaurs roaming the earth, and we were all trying to figure out language. We were writing on cave walls, and I was delivering printer cables. That's what we did as we went through this. Let's see how your answer was on this one. The question asked, a company is using a cloud-based service to provide centralized authentication for all of their users. Sounds great. Which of the following would best describe this service? Would it be CompTIA, SED, ALE, IDP? It's got to be one of those, right? Let's see what the results are. And we had folks answer, and we're kind of all over the place with this one. We've got a CA at 33%, effectively a tie for first place of IDP for 32%. And then we drop down to 23% for COPE. We also have 9% for SED, and we've got 3% for an ALE. Well, if we see this, and we know that people are asking questions about what these might be and where these fit, we're really focusing here on centralized authentication and cloud-based service. So where could we fit in a cloud-based service and then just have one central authentication system? That's really ideal, because you can imagine with a cloud-based service, people could be authenticating from anywhere in the world. It's going to be a massive database if you're incredibly successful. How do you maintain that? And where can you keep it all in one place? You would do that at an identity provider or an IDP. That's why it's kind of got these strange uppercase, lowercase, uppercase. We weren't trying to do a camel case thing. That's just how the abbreviation works itself out. This is identity provider. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as authentication as a service, like we need another as a service. So that's why it's not called as a service, thankfully, as we step through these. So hopefully you're familiar with what these are. Obviously, the identity provider is going to need to identify and authenticate all these different services, devices, and users. And it's commonly associated with perhaps a single sign-on and being able to use it. This is one where if you're logging into a cloud-based service, you need to at least have some type of proper authentication. And it usually has some type of standard that you're able to integrate with so that you can have authentication services other places, all communicating back to the centralized database using well-known protocols such as SAML, OpenAuth, OpenID Connect, and other types as well. This is a very common and increasingly common way to centralize your authentication. And since it's in the cloud, anyone would be able to connect with that and be able to use it. That is the identity provider. So if you're someone who is working on really trying to find the best way to centralize all your authentication, I think that would be a really good way to do it through the identity provider, or IDP. Now we have other options on here and things that you would be able to use. I've got a list of these that we could work through. And as you're going through this list, make sure you're familiar with some of these other abbreviations and options that are here. Options, for example, some of you mentioned, the 34% of you mentioned CA for a certificate authority. Certificate authorities are a place that establishes trust and is able to sign the certificates that you create, but it really has nothing to do with centralized authentication in a cloud-based service. It doesn't quite fit our scenario there. We have 23% that said COPE, 9% that said SED, and 3% that said ALE. These are all security abbreviations, whether you are managing security on a storage drive with a self-encrypting drive, maybe you're working through leveraging or understanding how much particular services are no longer available. You'd be working with ALE. So it depends on the structure and scope of the question that determines what answer we're going to be dealing with. And this is another one of those where we really do need to understand this very large breadth of abbreviations. Another thing I'll tell you, because we're sort of looking at this and kind of stepping through it, one of the things that I often will do is look at, for example, let's go back to this one. Maybe the COPE is what you chose, but then you went back to look in the exam objectives and see that is a corporately it's a mobile device that is corporately owned, but personally something you would be using. So that really doesn't fit at all into this, but the abbreviation itself may not be enough for you to make that decision. So I always tell people it's useful to know that CA means certificate authority, but it's more important to know what a certificate authority is. Having a corporately owned but personally enabled mobile device, just the term may not necessarily take you there. So I tell people, yes, you could do flashcards for your abbreviations, but don't rely on those on the exam, because the questions you get will probably take these topics and ask you to apply the topic rather than just know what the name happens to be. So that's sort of my warning sign for you doing a lot of, some of you spend a lot of time on your flashcards, which is great if the flashcard tells you this is CA, that's certificate authority, and here's what a certificate authority is used for. You're good. That's what you should be doing with your flashcards right there. Add the context to it, and it becomes so important. Now, I know we're well past our time, but I would like to do another question. I've always got a question on my list. Let's go through and do one of those. But this question is one that is not going to be one that I created specifically for the study group. Let's do a question that comes from my Security Plus Practice Exams book. If you haven't seen this, it is both, again, a physical edition book. It's a thick one. 380 pages. It is 3 separate 90-question practice exams. So if you're wondering, am I ready to take my exam? Well, you've got 3 practice ones here you could run through. You could even set a clock, start going through every question, and see if you happen to know what they are. I have the digital edition of my practice exams here, and I'd like to step through a question that comes from the digital edition. So those of you, we have the same rules that apply here. Again, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. This question is question B8 from the book. Let's see if I can change the view of this real quick. Here we go. Question B8 asks, the vice president of sales has asked the IT team to create daily backups of the sales data. The vice president is an example of a data owner, data protection officer, data steward, or data processor. So you've got a few different options there to pull from. Now, what I would commonly do, if this is delivered to you as a PDF, and hopefully you're using a PDF reader that allows you to do some annotation. I have some on mine. So if you know the answer, you can kind of click around, or you can highlight different pieces of this. If you've got a stylus like I do on my tablet, you can draw on the screen. You got a lot of different options there to work through, but those are at least something that you can use to write, so to speak, write on the book. Obviously, if you have the physical version, you can do anything else you'd like on that physical version and write on it. The one thing that's nice about this, though, is that I have links embedded into the PDF. So if you wanted the details of this answer, you can either scroll forward to page 172. You can see we're on page 135 right now. But instead of scroll, which would be a little ridiculous, you can simply click the details and it takes you to page 172. It gives you the question again, and it tells you that the answer is A, data owner, and it explains why that's the right answer. Now, this is also where I always have a problem, because I always get the question and the answer wrong. And I want to know, when I got the wrong answer, why is it the wrong answer? So I go through all of the incorrect answers and I explain to you why that particular response was incorrect. This not only gives you information to help you understand why you got it wrong, but if you take the exam, you'll see that this question may come up as this answer may come up as a question itself. So knowing these incorrect answers might help you answer a real question from your exam. So I tell people that even if you got it right, take a few extra minutes and read through the incorrect answers, just to qualify in your mind, in your brain, that you really do understand why those were incorrect answers. And it also helps if you don't recognize one of the answers, that now you will have an understanding of what that is, and that might come up on your exam as well. At the very bottom of this list is a QR code and a direct link where you can watch the video associated with this question. So if you just didn't understand the question at all, you can go back and watch the video that I used to create the question to begin with, because ultimately all of this comes back to the multiple choice questions like this one that we have here. So that's pretty important. Make sure you're familiar with all of these as we go through the practice exams. Here we go, the practice exams here. They are all on my website. That might be a good one to go with. Also, I will tell you that the PDF that I'm using for this is the one that's just built into my operating system. You don't need any special PDF reader. You may have a certain PDF reader that you like, and you're certainly able to do that. But that's why I published it as a PDF file, because you can effectively use it in any PDF reader that might be out there. I do run into some every now and then that do not properly parse this, but it's very rare. I give some examples in the book. Obviously, the Adobe PDF reader works great. I use the one built into Mac OS. I've used others, third-party PDF readers. They work great, and they're all there. So that's what I would recommend. Have a look at what those might be. See if that helps you. And you can always find out more on my website at professormesser.com/securitype. And of course, as always, if you get the physical edition, you also get the digital PDF for free. So that's how it works. It does allow you to click on it with the Adobe Acrobat Reader. I've tested that in both the Windows, Mac OS, other operating system as well. It works great. It really does provide a nice way to jump around the screen. And once you do that, I mean, we were looking at this one. It also has a back button option in almost every PDF reader you use. So I'll use the back button, and then I'll go back to where we started, and I'll just go to the next question on my list. So you can just keep going through the list one at a time and checking as you go, or you can simply scroll through and just start making notes on the PDF, and later you can go back and see how you did with those questions. It's all there on my Security Plus practice exams, another way that you might want to get into and have more questions available for you. It's have a look at those. Now on this exam, by the way, the things that are important. I mentioned before about the exam objectives. There they are. Follow the link at professormesser.com/objectives. Make sure you get your hands on that. Incredibly valuable tool. It should be the first thing you download and read through. It should be the last thing you read through before booking your exam, just to see if you're ready. And I tell people all the time, if you know every bullet that's in the exam objectives, you can explain every topic to a third party or maybe to yourself in the mirror. You're ready to take this exam, and you're going to pass it without a problem, because the exam stays so tight to this set of objectives. They rarely, if ever, go outside the scope of these objectives. And the times that I have seen them go outside the scope was a single question they asked on the exam that they put in there just to see how you would answer, but it wasn't actually graded. That does happen on the exam. So don't let weird questions throw you. I've had people come back and say, they asked me a question about a topic that's not even in the objectives. And I go, oh, that was a test question. That was a sample one they did to see how you would answer, but it probably had nothing to do with your final score, which is kind of nice. Be useful for those. My sections on my course notes and my practice exams are identical to the CompTIA exam objectives. They are not in different orders, so you're able to stay very close to the exam objectives and match them perfectly with what you do in the exam objectives notes and the practice exams. You can find exactly what you need. So another important thing that we do in these study groups every month. In April, we have one planned for April the 19th. Of course, we've got study groups at the beginning of April on the 4th and the 6th for A+, on the 13th for Network Plus, and the 19th for Security Plus. We've also got all of our replays available on our website. You can go back and see any of our study groups. We have a whole replay page, makes it easy to find. We'd love for you to join us there. If you're well after April and you're wondering when's the next event going to be, you can go to our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. We've also got an events channel on our Discord, which will tell you when the next event is going to be and give you a local time frame. And now that we're at the end of this month, I need to update that list on the Discord. Probably won't have anything in there after today. We'll make sure that we put some new ones in there so you can find exactly when that is going to be. Well, although I am done with my set of questions that I will be able to show you and tell you about, there's plenty more for us to do today. I have an after show where you can ask me questions. There are a lot of great questions that have already come in and things people talking about those. So let's go through that list and learn more about it. In the meantime, you can find everything that we're doing online at Twitter, at Facebook, at Instagram, at LinkedIn, and everywhere else by just adding that to the end of professormesser.com. So professormesser.com/Twitter/Instagram/LinkedIn/YouTube /Discord. It's a great way to find what we are doing online. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, stick around for the after show. We have a lot more to go through. Don't worry that that we're kind of late on time or early on time, we have plenty of time. So stick around. We'll come back to you in just a couple of seconds with the rest of our study group in the after show. In the meantime, thanks for joining us in this first hour, and we'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Okay, let's see. Let's pop me into a window. There we go. Let's see how we do with this. In the after show, I don't ask questions anymore. So I expect you to ask questions here in the after show. It's just a time that I kind of take some of the questions that were flying by during the live event that we really don't have time to back up and have a look at. But it's a great way for you to ask questions about the Security Plus certification exam, other certification exams, IT in general, or anything else that's going on that you might want to talk about. We'll go through all of those as we step through it. I think that the idea, and I'll move this over so we can get to this, the idea is that we want to be able to answer any of the questions you might have up to a certain point anyway, and we'll sort of step through those. And of course, earlier in the study group, I talked about things that I wanted to go through in the second part, in the after show. Now I have to scroll back and figure out, hopefully those of you in the chat room, I gave you a teaser on things we would talk about. What were we talking about? I've already forgotten the teaser. I should really write these down and being able to work through them. Somebody's going to remember though, and we'll put it in there, and we'll make sure that that happens as well. In the meantime, before we do any of those, I want to thank Lizzie on the track with this comment that says, I passed my Security Plus exam on Monday. Thank you for everything that you do. 100. Got 100% there from Lizzie on the track. And a $10 super chat. Thanks, Lizzie. Appreciate that. Thank you. Congratulations on your brand new Security Plus certification, and thanks for your support of what we do here. That is incredibly important to us, and we're so glad to hear about your Security Plus certification as well. I also want to thank A.M. Elkins Music for the $4.99 super chat, who says, I'm taking my Security Plus at the end of the month. This will be my first cert. At this point, I'm having dreams of SQL injections. Yes, that does happen. AM says, thank you for your content. You're most welcome. The whole buffer overflow, SQL injection, any type of security events, they all sort of get stuck in the brain trying to make all of these things happen. So I'm with you on that one. Some of you were asking about the practice exams and saying that how do you, are these questions, are they styled to be like the exam? They absolutely are. I intentionally took the same feel, the same voice, the same, or tried to at least emulate the same perspective they give during the exam, to the point of even making the questions similar, very similar to the same length that they use on the exam. Because in the previous 501 exam, the questions were paragraphs long. They were enormous. But in the latest 601, they shrunk those down to be about 2 sentences. They really very rarely went over 2 sentences, and they almost never went over 3. So, which was a very welcome addition. So that's why in my questions, you see a similar style. And in fact, there were people who will tell me that your questions were created and they had a different structure than another set of questions I got, which were much longer. I'm like, yeah, you probably were seeing outdated questions because they don't ask questions like that any longer. I tried to at least fit it into the world of that, making all of that happen. So hopefully that can give you at least a feel for what those types of things might be. And that I think is important when you're working through those. Let's see other questions that we were in being able to figure out all of those. So let's start with a question also from Ariane, who says, hi, what do you recommend studying apart from Security Plus certification to someone who knows nothing about cybersecurity and wants to start working on it? Well, this is one of the most common questions we get, especially since a lot of people start with Security Plus as their first certification. This is not uncommon, especially when you get into places like the U.S. federal government. especially the Department of Defense, where the Security Plus certification is a required entry-level cert to be able to work in IT with those organizations. And as it turns out, the rest of the federal government has sort of gathered themselves together with the same type of standards in many ways. So that's where I find a lot of people starting. They start with Security Plus. And the Security Plus is designed to be an entry-level cert. You could certainly start with Security Plus. You don't have to do A Plus first and Network Plus second. You can start with Security Plus, although there may be a little bit more of a learning curve when you do it that way. It's a great way to start. The real key, though, is if you're someone who really wants to get into cybersecurity, there are a number of entry-level jobs available in the IT security space. There are certainly a vast larger number available outside the security space for entry level. So this is one where I will tell people, if you're interested in IT security, you can absolutely look for an entry-level IT security job. But you may want to broaden your scope a bit to learn as much as you can about operating systems and networking, because all of that is knowledge you have to be able to be competent in the IT security world. So it might make more sense if you don't have a mandate to get Security Plus. You might want to look at A Plus or Network Plus first and then get to Security Plus. Or go to Security Plus first and then focus on entry-level jobs that are really focused on security. Something like a Security Operations Center, for example, or a SOC is a very common entry-level way to get into security. There are other IT security jobs out there for entry-level. They're not as common as other entry-level positions in IT, but they are out there. So I've had people tell me that you don't want to discourage people from looking into entry-level security, but you should also know that there are many other entry-level jobs in IT and a vast larger pool to choose from outside security itself. So I tell people you may want to take a different route to get to security. Start in the operating system side. Start with Windows, start with Linux, or maybe start with networking and then move into IT security. That's sometimes it's a different approach and certainly a different path, but it might position you better when you're ready to get into the IT security world. That part's up to you, and it's up to whatever you think your path might be. Not everybody follows the same path. Not everybody has the same strategy or the same need or the same interest in IT. So follow whatever interests you. That's really what's worked for me in my industry. Is when I got into IT, I would see something bright and shiny. Oh, look at this Windows operating system. Let's get into Windows and pull it apart and see what's inside. How does this work? How can I automate it? How can I integrate it into other parts of the network? What things do I need to have in my image and administration of those Windows systems? And then I took that knowledge and moved it into networking. When these devices are communicating off the network, what do we do? How do we manage that? That's another important part of it. And then lastly, maybe that's what we use to kind of move into the world of security. Is now we have this strong foundation in operating systems. We have built a strong foundation in networking. That's exactly what security professionals need to know. That's what people will be looking for from you, and it will make it much easier to get into the IT security world. So that's my recommendation. Maybe that can help you as well. We'll have to see if that fits into your world. Adrienne, thank you so much. Reminds me the question that I completely forgot from the main part of the study group was someone was interested in the best laptop for cybersecurity. So let's talk about laptops. Let's talk about security. Let's talk about where this fits. And I mentioned in my past role as a cybersecurity systems engineer, working for Palo Alto Networks, I was one of those field people that would go around and show people this great new next generation firewall technology, how to integrate it, how to plan, how to build out a network, how to design these systems, not only standalone, but redundant, and be able to handle anything the network was going to throw at it. We really had to have a laptop, something mobile we could take with us that had enough power to demonstrate these security functions that we needed. But it needed to also be something that was good for administration, something we could do our emails and create reports and all of the other things. We focused and centralized for all of the cybersecurity SEs in the company, all ran with a MacBook. So that's probably one of the reasons among many why you see sort of MacBooks here in the studio, is because I have been using them for so long for doing security type work. These MacBooks are valuable, in many ways. One of them is that they're fantastic platforms to use as a computing device. So there's some advantages there. It's also, and although there is some, we can argue about this to a large degree, and it would be a great argument, but some people will say, I'm getting a Mac because they are safer. They are less prone to malware. And I would say there is a little bit of truth in that. The reality, of course, is that every operating system has vulnerabilities. Every operating system has applications running on it with vulnerabilities. And every operating system probably has vulnerabilities in it that we just haven't found yet. So this is the case with Windows, this is the case with Linux, and it's the case with Mac OS. There is no panacea, there is no perfect operating system that does everything you need to do. But one of the nice things about Mac OS and the way it operates, at least, and we'll talk about Mac OS these days, is that we are using a new set of CPUs to be able to work here, RISC-based CPUs that have Apple calls their M1, their M2, and of course we'll see newer generations of the Mac CPU made available in the M3, the M4. We already see the rumors in the industry about those. And that's why I'll tell people Mac OS makes a great platform. It is great for running things, but their new platforms are not Intel-based systems. And if you need to run an Intel-based operating system, you can't do it on a Mac anymore. You have to have one that at least understands the architecture of these new M1 and M2 operating systems. So something that is an ARM operating system is what we're looking for. So for example, I'll create virtual machines on my MacBook and I'll run those. In fact, you've seen me do that. If you've seen any Windows in any of my courses, it is a virtual machine running on my Mac OS system. So that's great. The problem, though, is that not every operating system has an ARM version, an ARM-compatible version available. So there may be versions about these Linux versions, for Linux distributions, for example, that are not ARM versions, and I can't run them. So there are some limitations there that you have to keep in mind. But from a security perspective, because it is a POSIX-based operating system, it's based on BSD, it's based on Unix, Mac OS is, because you have that, there's a lot of security software you can run that's available. So that makes it another great platform. Plus, it's a closed system, and we can have arguments about these laptops and being made by one company, and all of the components of this device are made by that company, and it's very difficult, if not challenging, to use third-party products sometimes with these. The advantage, though, is that everything in the OS automatically recognizes all of the hardware in this device. I don't have to worry about not having a driver for a wireless card. I don't have to worry about the drivers not being good enough for the video, because all of the drivers, all of the hardware is all a closed system, and it's more reliable. We can argue that it's not. You could say that's not true. We can do that, but it really is. And we all know that's the case. You know it's the case. The problem, though, is when you need to go outside the scope of this. Sometimes you need Linux. Sometimes you need Windows. And this is not the best platform to run Linux on. It's not the best platform to run Windows on, but you can do that. Sometimes Windows is a better one to have depending on your local company. Maybe there are certain applications you have to run and they have to be in Windows and they won't let you run it as a VM. Okay, well, I could see where a Windows laptop may be useful. But I say if you find practically any security company that has engineers in the field and you want those engineers to have the most secure and most flexible computing platform available to them, more often than not, you will see them carrying around a Mac OS type MacBook platform, because that's what we do. The Mac OS that are the Linux that I was running into the other day, I was trying to remember which one this was, but there's a number of Linux distributions that are not available as ARM. And I'm gonna have to find it because I don't remember which one it was off the top of my head. Let's see if I can remember what it was. It wasn't Cinnamon. I want to say it started with a C, and it was sort of it looked very Windows 10-ish. Was an odd name. I had not run the distribution before, but somebody who had my products had, and I wanted to try it out, and I put it in a VM, and they go, nope, it won't work. Doesn't work in a VM. So it doesn't have an ARM version. It looks like Windows, and it starts with a C. Somebody, there's got to be a Linux geek in the chat that can tell me which distribution that was. I kind of focus on Debian and CentOS. I never go outside my scope, it seems. Sometimes I'll run an Ubuntu, but that's it. Ubuntu is kind of the limit outside the scope that I'll go, and then I'm done. Sometimes, yes, I do have Kali that I will run. It was not a CentOS. It was CentOS is absolutely available in an ARM version. So I don't know. Not sure what that was. So I'll have to figure it out. I'll have to go back through my emails. I don't want to go back through my search engine. I'll just never find anything. I don't know why we keep a search history, because I try to search my search history and I end up getting all the things that I wasn't looking for. That's the problem with search history. I need a better way to do that. We'll work on that. We'll get a better way to do a search history. The next way. There's got to be an app for that, isn't there? I'm sure there is. Let's do another question that folks had. So that by the way, answers my question with the laptop. I'm certain that people will not be happy with that answer. I'm certain that people have other ideas and other thoughts. And I will tell you, the thoughts you have about what you put on your laptop and what you run are probably correct for you. You have to find the right solution for what you're running. I used to run a laptop with Windows, and that's what I ran all the time, and then converted over to Mac OS. Ultimately converted over to Mac OS just because my local desktop Windows system wouldn't stop rebooting every night, or every time it wanted to. Every time there was a patch, I would tell Windows, stop rebooting. Don't reboot anymore. And it said, oh, did you say don't reboot? I'm rebooting. So it just ignored me completely. And ultimately, when you have these videos that I produce that take, at the time, were taking hours and hours to render, that I'd leave it running overnight, and I'd come in and it only ran for an hour because the system rebooted. I may have said a bad word. I might have said filthlarn just a couple times when that happened. And that was enough for me to throw that thing out and get Mac OS, just because they couldn't get their act together on those things. Other questions. Let's keep going down this list. It was not Cinnamon. It was not CentOS. You guys are really good. It was not Sigwin. None of those. For those of you in the chat room wondering, where are my courses? Where can I find those? They are on YouTube. They're on the Professor Messer website. Go to professormesser.com. In fact, one of the things I added this week was a Start Here link for Security Plus. So if you want to find everything on my site available to study for Security Plus, both free and premium products, they are all on that one page. So now everything is there, including frequently asked questions for Security Plus. So if you don't know when the expiration or when the retirement date for the 601 is, there's a frequently asked questions at the end of the page. Questions like how long does it take to study for this? It's on there. So that's some of those to be able to work there. Not Cub Linux. Haven't even seen that one. Isn't this interesting when you get into Linux that there's just tons of things to choose from? You can find exactly the platform and distribution you would like with Linux. It's so flexible. In my case, I have every operating system you would ever need to run. I run Windows, I run Mac OS, I run Linux, and I try to pick the right operating system for the job, whatever it happens to be. So that's why everything that you see on my desktop is a Mac OS. Behind the scenes, there is some Windows running. And if you're on my website, there's Linux that you happen to be using. So a little bit of everything. I think that's important. If you're going to be a good technologist, you really need to understand everything that you work through. Gail asks, are exam objectives specific to each test or specific for the type of Security Plus exam? The exam objectives, the number that's associated with those is the version of the exam that you're taking. So prior to this version 601 being available, the SY0-501 is the one that was prior to this, that was retired, is no longer available. And that's why I tell people, if you're studying from materials that have on them SY0-501, throw them away, put them away. Do not study from them. The 601 exam was a huge rewrite. More than half of the information on the 601 is brand new. Half of it. So that means you could study an entire 501 book, know everything that was in that book, walk into the exam, and the best you can do is 50%. Got to tell you, 50% is not passing. So that's why I tell you, throw out the 501 materials. They are no good to you. You need materials specifically written for the 601 exam. So important. Make sure you're familiar with that. So have a look at those. Make sure you got the 601 exam objectives and you'll be good. I think that's probably the most important consideration. I've had people come to me after they've taken the exam and say, I got asked a lot of things I wasn't expecting. Boy, that was a hard exam. I didn't pass it because I got so many questions about topics. And they said, I said, well, what topics did you get? Well, I got one on IDP, and I got a question about COPE, and I got a question about SOAR, and I said, well, that's all in the 601 exam objectives. They go, well, the what? What are the exam objectives? Like they didn't even know there were objectives. Or I've had somebody tell me, oh, I just thought the objectives were an overview. I didn't think they had any detail to them. So for those people that are in that particular boat, I would like to show you the exam objectives. So let's start with, sorry, I've got them sort of stuck on my screen there, don't I? Let's show you the objectives. This is what you would download. This is the PDF. It should say on it the SY0-601 right there on the front. Gives you an overview about the exam and what the percentages are for the different topics or domains that they will cover during the exam. There are 5 domains on the Security Plus exam. And this is what you will find. So for example, section 1.0, threats, attacks, and vulnerabilities, compare and contrast different types of social engineering techniques. There's phishing, smishing, vishing, spam over instant messaging, which is SPIM, spear phishing, dumpster diving, shoulder surfing, farming, tailgating, eliciting information, and whaling. And that's just the first column of 3 columns in section 1.1. So when I tell you, you need to know every bullet, you need to explain phishing to me in a way that I can understand. Now explain smishing. Now explain vishing. Am I saying the same thing over and over again? I am not. Now explain spam, and then spim, and then spear phishing, and then dumpster diving, and you go through the whole list. Once you've done that for section 1.1, you can cross that one off your list and go to section 1.2, which also has a huge list of bullets that you need to go through. You can start to see the scope of this as we step through it. It's a big scope. There's a lot you need to know. So that's why I tell people, get the objectives, use that as your checklist. You're going to be good. Just keep doing that. You'll be fine. Let's do some more questions that came in. This one, I don't know how to pronounce that name. You're going to have to give me that one phonetically, because I would like to know. It says, how much have you used Linux in your career? And do you think it's a must-have for someone getting into networking? Is it Joa? Is it Joao? I want to know. See, now I need to know. I'm not good just butchering a name. I really want to know how these names are pronounced. So you can tell me that. Let's talk about Linux a bit. In my career, I started with Joan. How's that? Is that close? Let's Play's trying to give me a Portuguese breakdown. He's trying to tell me how this all works, and I'm not very good at it. So thank you for bearing with me. It's close enough. We'll take it. The idea of understanding operating systems is an important one. There are many similarities to Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. There's a lot of things identical between all of those, and there's just as many, if not more, things different between all of those operating systems. Early in my career, I always hate giving these stories because it sounds like the old guy is telling you about the way things ran back in the Old West. But it really is the case that I learned this particular technology before there was Linux. So before there was Linux, we ran Unix in our operating systems. I learned my flavor of Unix on Sun OS back in the day. Not even Solaris yet. It was Sun OS at the time. And that's where I got my first foray or first knowledge into the world of the Unix or POSIX-based operating systems. And a lot that I learned about shell scripts, running, how to run the different commands in Linux, how to manage the operating system and the file system, I learned on the Unix side, which was great when they finally introduced Linux and that became so popular. That was easy to slide right into Linux because it was effectively identical as the Unix systems that I grew up with, if you will. A great way to understand those operating systems. And I think the more you use the operating system, the more knowledge you have about what's happening under the surface of that operating system, the better of a technologist you're going to be, especially with Linux and security. Look at all of the different tools available for security professionals that are only available in Linux. It's an enormous number. A huge number of Linux folks are people who have understood how to make Linux really do what they need for it to do. And that's why I mentioned, although we ran Mac OS on our laptops, we were running a number of tools that were made available for a POSIX-based operating system, and that's why, because we just had that POSIX-based operating system right there. So I think if you're someone who is trying to get into networking, security, and really just build your knowledge base, knowing Linux is a valuable thing. In fact, I'll tell people, find the thing that nobody else is really doing well in your organization. Maybe you got lots of Windows folks. There's a huge infrastructure of Windows that you have, but every company has Linux. Every single company you will ever go to has some installation of Linux because it's free. And so that Linux implementation is one that needs to be managed. It needs to be monitored. It needs troubleshooting, and things need to be fixed occasionally. You need to update the software. You need to maintain those systems. Perfect chance for a Linux operating system manager, someone who can manage that Linux system, whether it's a server or desktop, and be able to make sure that it continues to work properly. The more you know about that, now you have more skills you put on your CV, on your resume. Now you can take those skills and say, time to level up. Now that I know Windows, now that I know Linux, and you might even know Mac OS as well, let's now go learn the networking piece. And when you get into networking and you start to see, here's an NFS communication, you're thinking, well, NFS, I ran that in Linux. Or you see SMB, and you see the SMB communication back and forth, you go, oh, there's Windows talking. Or maybe it's Windows talking to Linux, and it's using SMB, and you've got Samba running on the Linux side. You want to troubleshoot all of the SMB protocol and understand what's happening. Now you know, because now you know the best of both worlds. You know the Windows side, you know the Linux side. You can integrate those even better. So I do recommend, if you're somebody who is interested in getting into security, I always recommend you learn as much about operating systems as you can, and you learn as much about networking as you can. A huge amount of IT security is layered right on top of the networking piece. So the more you know about networking, the stronger IT technologist you're going to be on the security side as well. That's incredibly important. So make sure you're familiar. There was another question that came up I want to address. Let me see if I can find this one again, because it was pretty good. There it is. It was from Mackenzie, who says, is Python necessary in cybersecurity or any coding languages? If yes, do I need to study these coding languages? The answer is yes and no. So let's break this down. So the first question, is Python necessary in IT security? I'm going to say IT security because cybersecurity is not a thing. It's not real. It doesn't exist and has a different definition on who you talk to. But IT security is very clearly the security folks that live and work in the IT world, which is different than security maybe over in the computer science world. Let's talk about that in a moment too. So Python is perhaps one of the most popular scripting languages you will find today. I always tell people, if you want to prove yourself in technology, you should learn as much as you can about Python and learn as much as you can about PowerShell. And once you have those fundamentals down, you can do lots of other scripting in a batch file, in a shell script, and other methods as well. It's relatively easy to move to different scripting languages once you know the most popular: Python, PowerShell. Pick either one of those or pick both and learn as much as you can about both of those. Now, when people say coding, I like to qualify that, because in IT and information technology, we don't build applications. We don't take requirements from a customer. We don't have a bunch of programmers sitting around building apps, and we don't troubleshoot application problems. That's not IT. That's computer science. That's a different group. It's probably on a different part of the floor. It's a different team of people. There's an entire science around building applications and understanding application development languages that has nothing to do with IT. IT, we don't build apps. If we need an app, we tell the app people to build one for us. So we implement the applications. We maintain the data associated with those applications. We make sure the services are available for people that need to use the application. And we secure all of those pieces so that it maintains its uptime and availability, and nobody gains access to the data who shouldn't have access to it. That's what we do as IT security professionals. So because of that, you don't need to know C++. You don't need to know how to program in Java. You don't need to know how to program or do what's better. Instead of calling it coding or programming, I tend to call it application development. We don't do application development, but we do tons of scripting. Why? Because I'm lazy. That's why. I don't want to sit here and type the same thing into my SSH screen over and over and over. It would be much easier if I could just create a Python script that would automatically connect to the switch, download the configuration file, store it on my system, and then do that for all of my switches and do it every day at a certain time. And that way I always have a backup of every switch configuration. And I can even look at differences that have occurred through the years or weeks or months on these switches, so I can see what the differences are from one day to the other. That's a perfect use of a script. So Python would be great for doing that. So there's a really good example of how scripting is so important. We've been doing automation in IT forever. Since there have been computers, we've been doing automation. And in fact, the earliest computers didn't have an interactive front end that you could type into. You had to build all of your programs offline, punch all of those into the computer, somehow get that program into the system you were using, and then you clicked a button and it ran. And you never know how that thing would run until you got the final results that said your program worked properly, or your program didn't work properly and here's where it failed. Then you have to go back and fix your code, shove everything back into the computer again, hit the go button and hope it works. But there was no interactive view to that. There was no way to do it in real time. You had to submit it. It was all batch processes. So this is something we've been doing forever in IT, is finding automated ways to do things, especially while we sleep. So we might be monitoring a storage drive, and if the storage drive gets full, we can have an automated process, clean things off, and free that up so the system remains up and running. All of that happens while we're away, while we're doing something else, while we're sleeping. And so we don't have to manually stop what we're doing and solve that particular problem. And so if you're someone getting into this world of IT, highly recommend you become familiar with Python, highly recommend you become familiar with PowerShell. Either one of those, employers would love it if you would focus on those. I think that's incredibly important. And if you're someone getting into the world of IT, it's going to give you a leg up. You're going to have more interest in those skills from more employers than if you didn't have those skills, because employers love the Python and they love the PowerShell. Imagine, I see this all the time, is that there will be a 0-day event and it's Microsoft Windows that is being attacked, and it's a particular configuration setting in Windows that is allowing the attack to occur, but we don't have a patch yet. And we've got 1,000 computers in our environment that are now susceptible to this 0-day attack. All we really have to do is change one registry entry or one configuration setting, and it may be that creating a simple PowerShell script can do that automatically for all of our systems. And being able to have that power of not having to manually connect all these systems and manually copy files and manually do the patching and manually do the configuration settings that we need, just put it into a script and push a button and it just fixes all of your systems from that one script. That's the way you do it right there. And that's why it's so valuable. That's why employers think it's so valuable, because it may be the difference between your network being available or your network being inundated and down due to ransomware or some other type of malware. Absolutely an important consideration. Thank you, Mackenzie, for that question. It really is incredibly important and a very good set of skills to know. That's why, and if you took the A+ certification, there was a whole section on scripting. Well, there's a reason there's a whole section on scripting, because it is so important to have that scripting knowledge and being able to use that. Group policy does fit into that to some degree. PowerShell has hooks into group policy, services, and other internals within Windows. So when I speak about PowerShell, I don't just mean copying files from one place to the other. I mean managing the entire Active Directory and Windows infrastructure, which really no other scripting language can do. So PowerShell is incredibly valuable in that perspective. Other questions. Let's keep it going on here. Here's one more about our materials, our questions of are the course notes like the videos, but in book form? Yes, that's exactly what they are. So I take every bit of text that's on the screen. It's in the course notes. I take the important charts that are in my videos. They're in the course notes. Any interesting graphics that show different attack types or sort of have an infographic of something, it's in the course notes. So yes, imagine you've now watched the video, you're now familiar with the topics. Now you just need something to remind you of the things you need to know. That's where the course notes comes in. That's exactly where that is. So thank you for asking that, because that's an important thing too. Some people think it's a textbook. It's not designed to be a textbook. There's a lot of great textbooks out there. I don't plan on writing one of those. I instead want to focus on giving you exactly what you need to know to pass the exam, and that's what these course notes do. Security Plus course notes are just huge. There's a lot of paper in here. These are the biggest set of course notes I've ever created because this is the biggest Security Plus exam there's ever been. So that's how that works. Other questions. How many pins does a SCSI connector have? David, stop that. Who knows? It could be anything from 25 to actually less than 25 up to 48, 49, 57. There have been some crazy SCSI connectors. You don't find SCSI connectors really on the exams, on the A+ exams. Really more about SCSI, the protocol. And I would say, and this is the part that I don't think a lot of people realize. A lot of people know about SATA drives, and they think that SATA is the largest deployment of storage protocols in use. There has to be some type of communication across those wires to pull things off of these storage drives. And it turns out there's much more SCSI out there than there ever is in anything else, PATA or SATA. So it's probably the most, and it's because virtual machines very often use SATA as the method to communicate to storage. So that's why. That's the way you do it. Other questions on here. And this is a pretty good one. Thanks, Let's Play. How do you securely wipe an SSD? You cannot. You cannot really securely wipe an SSD. And that's due mostly to the way that a solid-state drive stores data, is that it stores most of the data in an accessible area on the memory of that system. But there are fragments of that data stored other places on the SSD that are only partially accessible or not accessible at all. So that's why I always tell people, if you have an SSD and you want it to be secure, the only way to make that SSD truly secure is to get a hammer and just hit it with a hammer. That's your only way to secure an SSD in reality. So that's why, or unless you just don't send that SSD anywhere else. That's the key. Crunch it up. It's something you're going to have to destroy because that's an important part of it. So is there a recommended length of time before taking the exam? Adrian says, I know it's an individual process to get ready, but do you find there's a good rule of thumb? Is it 45 days, 60 days, more than that? It does vary depending on the person, but on average, I have found that people coming to my site and taking the exam tend to take about 2 to 3 months. And that seems to be a good middle ground for most. Some people can do it faster than that. Maybe they already have knowledge of security in the industry. But there's some people that need a lot more time. I'm a 6-month certification kind of person. I need a lot of time to read. I only have so much free time during the day. So it really takes me a long time to take every topic, really understand it, prepare that topic for an exam environment, and then I can go to the next topic. Well, that just takes time. That means that I am going to have to really sit down and understand everything. That's going to take me 6 months. But that's reasonable. That's not unusual. Some people take a year before they take their certification exam. The important part, if I could just go back to it, you have to go back to the exam objectives. If you know every bullet of the exam objectives, you're ready to take your exam. If you don't know every bullet of the exam objectives, you are not ready to take your exam. And that's really the only time, the only categorization of time that you should really care about. However long it takes, that's the answer. And that's not a great answer, I realize. But the average is 2 to 3 months, just so you're aware. Let's go back to this one, because this one made me laugh, Chess. How many lines of code are cybersecurity professionals expected to be able to do for a typical task? None. There's no lines of code. This is not a computer science world that we live in. It's information technology, and information technology doesn't get into the world of coding or lines of code. Or coding efficiencies, or any of the weird tests they have to go through when you're applying for a job with programmers or application developers. It doesn't work that way. So don't worry if you're in the world of IT. It has nothing to do with writing code, writing applications. It has to do with scripting. And how many lines of scripting are expected to do for a typical task? Well, however many it takes. It might take 3 lines. And your script is done. It might take 30 lines and your script is finished, or it might take 300 and your script is done. If you're asking me to script it, I'm really bad at scripting. I feel like I'm bad at scripting. I get the job done, but I feel like if you put somebody professional to look at my code, they would look at this code. It's awful. Who wrote this? Well, I did. I'm the one that wrote it. This is written by a 3rd grader. I know, but it works. It's awful. Well, don't read it. Just run it. And if it runs, that's all we have. That's all we really care about. We're not designed to be application developers. We don't plan to be application developers. We'll never be application developers, but we will write code. Sometimes that scripting that we write is really bad scripting, but it works. And that's the important part. I would definitely give you a perspective of that if you sit through these. Other questions. Let's keep going. As I look at my clock that is quickly going. Let's see. Other things. So I have some here that might help. This is from Nancy. What's the best way to visualize cryptographic functions for a newbie? I'm having trouble understanding blockchain, stream ciphers, ECC, etc., without ever having been exposed to them in real life. That is certainly something I always keep in the back of my mind when I'm making my videos. And I have in all of my videos that deal with these cryptographic functions, I try to give you some practical examples of that. And in some cases, show you an infographic step-by-step on how these things happen. There's a great one, for example, that come to mind. If you wanted to understand more about Diffie Hellman, I take you through the entire process of Diffie Hellman. How does somebody doing a digital signature, how do you create a digital signature? How do you verify a digital signature? I have a step-by-step infographic in my video videos on these topics. So I would just point you to the videos, because there's a use case, and I try to make a use case in almost all of these so you understand when you would use them and then how they manifest themselves in this real world of ours. I think that's a great place to go. Other questions as we step through more of these. I talk a lot about scripting. I talk a lot about automation. And AKS asks, so are these scripts used for malware development and viruses? Almost never. And again, we're not application developers. We're not malware developers. We don't break down viruses. We don't deconstruct processes. We don't do any of that. That's computer science. So it's a completely different group of people. If you're interested in breaking apart and deassembling an executable and understanding how malware operates and really breaking down into machine code how the malware got into your system and then what it did once it got into your system, you should not be on this live stream. You should be somewhere doing computer science things, because IT people don't do that. We focus on the IT side of things. There's plenty of folks out there that are really good at application development, that are focused on making these understanding the internals of malware and applications and how they're working. But that's not IT. That's not Security Plus. That's not what we tend to do on the IT side. It's a completely different group of people. Imagine having to learn everything you've had to learn in Security Plus, and then on top of that, somebody comes in and says, oh yeah, you also need to know C++, and you need to know how to take a single executable and then break it apart into machine code and then understand what that machine code does. That's a whole world. That's a whole lifetime of techniques and knowledge you need. So I would really tell people, kind of focus on the IT side of things. Don't worry about understanding code, understanding the way applications are built, understanding what's happening at the machine level for malware, because we're never going to do it. And some people in the chat room are even kind of laughing about this. Why? To simply understanding machine language. Why would you need to know that? Because that's what you have to do to understand how malware operates. Coming from a company that really focused on identifying malware and creating signatures for the malware, we had to have technologists that were very good at really breaking apart all of this malware, identifying what it was doing, and then creating signatures that could block the malware on our networks. So there is a very good use case or very good set of careers that can be built on doing that type of thing, but it's over on the computer science side. Has nothing to do with IT. The IT part is that person will then create a signature based on the deassembly that they did of the executable. They'll hand us the signature and say, here's the signature that will block this malware. Now go deploy it. Okay, now it's in my lap. Now I got to deploy the thing. So I'll use my scripts. I'll use some built-in deployment functions within my firewalls. I'll use whatever tools I have available to get that signature now put onto systems so those systems can be protected. That's the difference between computer science and information technology. It's a completely different scope. And as much as the industry, it seems, would love to squeeze those together, we've seen that over the last number of years, is that there's been that DevOps thing that they've tried to turn into a one person doing everything. And what they quickly found was that, hey, one person can't do all of this. That's correct. They can't. So what they've ended up being is that the DevOps people have turned into people that really know how to script very well for cloud-based environments. It really should be IT people doing what IT people have always done. That's DevOps. That's now what DevOps has turned into, because it didn't turn into the thing they hoped it would be, which was take a lifetime of programming knowledge, combine that with a lifetime of information technology, and put it in one person. And it's entry level. That's not going to work. That's never worked. So that's why I sort of focus on the idea of do what IT does. Security Plus is certainly focused for the most part on what IT does. We have a little bit of computer science sprinkled into a number of the topics that are in Security Plus, but it's not a lot. It's just enough for us to understand the world those people must live in. And it also helps us understand the information they're giving us out of the computer science world. But we don't have to be programmers. We'll never be programmers. We're not designed to be programmers. If you want to do programming, go do that. But that's not what IT does. So absolutely. That's your focus. That's what you want to do, is really go down that side. If you ever are in the world of trying to figure out where you should go, I would really look at those two sides, then break it down from there. Go into computer science and write applications, or go into IT and protect data and implement operating systems and keep everything up and running. It's two different worlds, and you should focus on the world that you really like. I think ultimately that's the one that makes the most sense. It's a bit of a challenge, I realize, because the industry and the universities really push the computer science side and have very little options available for the IT side. And it's almost not confusing, but it's a different balance between those two. So I tell people, focus on IT. If you want to go to the IT side, don't worry so much about the computer science side. That's not really going to be your issue. That's not going to be something you'll ever get into. You're going to focus on the IT piece. I think that's important too. And I think Security Plus is a really good overview of that. It kind of sets those boundaries so you can really see where you need to go and where you perhaps can't go, and have that. Some questions. Do you know if CompTIA offers discounted student vouchers in Canada? I read it's U.S. only. It's North America. So it's the discounted vouchers are available. Student vouchers. In fact, let's break down the student voucher question, because I think that'd be a good one to go with. Let's go to the CompTIA store, the CompTIA Academic Store. For those of you not familiar, the CompTIA Academic Store is kind of the same store that you have for other non-academic study materials, but it's just for people that are in school. You're a student learning this. And there is a verification they do based on those things. You could see, for example, it says these rules apply. It's limited to a single product. You can only buy 4 vouchers and 6 digital products in a 6-month period. Your total lifetime of either must not exceed 10 of those. At checkout, you'll be asked to provide eligibility information, and that means they don't check email. They check to see if you're really a student who is in class. And I think there is information on here that talks about where these are good and how. Let's see if I can find the details of this. Academic store, CompTIA, and specifically, we were interested in Canada and how those things apply. So let's figure out the discounts there. The pieces where you focus on with the academic store, let's see what's available in the academic marketplace. I pulled up the help on this because I think there is a breakdown of the academic store and how it fits into all of these. I want to say that it does. We're gonna find this. I would like to hunt it down. It's in the help, or it was in the help, probably not there anyway. Because there's a mention there, but I don't think it's academic. It's talking about VAT, so it's outside the United States. I want to say it's North America, but you're right. It's not here. It's obviously not here straight up in your face on the academic store. So we're going to have to do a little bit more research on that one. I thought it was North America, and I thought it applied to higher education and I want to say sort of high school level, but I may be wrong with one or more of those. So that's why I'm thinking at the top of my head that it was North America. And of course, last we checked, Canada was in North America. I realize that's not always the case. The categorizations of where people are and how they fit into this is not always what one would expect, but that's what I believe it is. So if somebody has a link, they can send it to me and we'll kind of focus on that. They used to look at email addresses. And if you had an EDU email address, you could get a discount. But they don't do that anymore. They actually check to see if you are registered at that university or at that school. So that's That's kind of unusual, really. That they even have the capability to do that's unique. And it's nice that you don't have to have a certain email address to make that happen. So that's why I say just go online, see if you can use it. I think ultimately that's the best way to do it, is to go online, try to purchase when you're in Canada, and see if it allows you to do that. Maybe that's not the best idea. Open a ticket and ask them, then purchase. Because when you purchase on the CompTIA store, not refundable. So that's why I tell you, don't purchase until you're sure that it's something that you can use on here. This is a Security Plus question. Pretty good one to use, which says, Diffie Hellman, is it still used in IT today for encryption? Well, no. Diffie Hellman was never used for encryption because Diffie Hellman is not an encryption protocol. But it's used in the encryption process. So if I can take your question and kind of extrapolate on it a little bit, Diffie Hellman is a key exchange protocol that allows two devices on the network to create a session key that they can use to encrypt data to each other without sending that session key across the network. Is that possible? What? You're not sending it across the network. It's almost like saying, pick a number between 1 and a million billion. And they both always come up with the same one every time. So, and I realize there's a much larger number than a million billion that I could have chosen there. But that's the idea, is that how do two devices, how can they come up with the same session key, but not actually send that session key to each other? That's what Diffie Hellman does. And it is powerful, and it is used all the time on our networks. The derivatives and types of Diffie Hellman, additions to the Diffie Hellman protocol, are used on some of the most modern protocols. For example, the SAE that is built into WPA3 is based on Diffie Hellman. So there's a good example of how this technology is used all the time in IT, all day, every day, to make that happen. I give you an example of Diffie Hellman and how it works step by step in this graphical infographic on the video of that. So I would highly recommend you go have a look at that video. It really steps you through the process, and it's remarkable how we're able to make that cryptographic trick happen, because it makes your network more secure. And now you can really send that data back and forth and really use it the right way. Other questions, and I want to kind of approach this one because I want to clear up something that I received in an email recently. This is from Let's Play that says, is hashing used in a digital signature? It is. There is a little bit of hashing used. The digital signatures themselves involve a little bit of hashing, a little bit of encryption, a little bit of asymmetric encryption with your hashing. So you get a little bit of everything, but that's kind of normal in the world of cryptography. There was someone, I don't know if this was on my Discord or if it was an email that was sent to me, but they were talking about PGP. So PGP, pretty good privacy, or the open source version of it is GPG. Both of those are methods of using asymmetric encryption to protect your data, to encrypt data that's on your system. And people will sometimes try to break this down to a level that is not practical. For example, within PGP, there's plenty of symmetric encryption going on behind the scenes. There's hashing that's going on behind the scenes, but we don't describe PGP as a hashing protocol, and we don't describe PGP as a symmetric encryption protocol because it is not. PGP uses asymmetric encryption to be able to encrypt data. What happens at the minor level behind the scenes with these algorithms is not as important as overall what the encryption mechanism is doing. And for PGP, it is very solidly and without any equivocation an asymmetric encryption mechanism. Nobody looks at PGP and says, oh, we use that for our symmetric encryption. No. Oh, we use that because it does hashing. No, that's not what that does. Is there hashing that goes on in PGP? Yes. Is there some symmetric encryption behind the scenes that goes on in PGP? Yes, there is. But we would never describe it that way because that's not what we're using it for. We use it for asymmetric encryption. So that's what I would absolutely say works along those lines. So make sure you're familiar with that. We do hashing in digital signatures. We do asymmetric encryption in digital signatures. Asymmetric encryption uses some symmetric encryption. It goes on and on. These types of technologies we use for encryption are many and varied and very often used at the same time to be able to get the ultimate output that we were looking for. So that's my overview of those. Don't ever read too much or try to break down encryption into its smallest form. First, it'll make your head hurt really bad. And secondly, it doesn't quite explain broadly what the technology does when you're breaking out into these tiny little pieces and explaining what each individual piece does. So the Security Plus exam doesn't care about the individual piece. It cares about what PGP does for you. It cares about what GPG does for you. And it doesn't care about the internals of how it got to the final piece that it provides. So don't worry about now. If you're changing jobs and you want to go over on the computer science side and you want to build out your own encryption mechanisms and you want to integrate that into an application that you're building, then you may need to know the details of that. But that's computer science. We're over here on IT. That's the difference. A good follow-up to some of the things that have been asked today is from Michael, who asks, what is the next certificate one should go for after Security Plus? Is there a pathway? There's always a pathway, but everybody's pathway is a little bit different. It's interesting that in my world of technology, and if you look at Security Plus, Network Plus, and A Plus, I took Security Plus first, then I took Network Plus, then I took A Plus. Sort of did it the exact backwards you would do it. But here's why. So I'll tell you where I started with these. Back in the day, there was a series of certifications called the CNX, Certified Network Expert. That particular line of certificates has been gone a very long time. But it's one where it was a certification on Ethernet, on other networking technologies. There was a CNX for cabling. So you had to really understand physical cabling and earn a CNX. It was not from CompTIA. That was the certifying authority, was CNX, Certified Network Expert. And the CNX was great because if you passed your Ethernet CNX, you really knew Ethernet. If you passed your network cabling CNX, you really knew network cabling. And I took all the CNX certifications. I think there was about 5 of them total. And now 3 of them are on technologies that we no longer use. That's how long ago this has been. So that was one of my first certs. And then I went and got a Microsoft. I was very big into Microsoft Windows. And I went and got my Microsoft MCSE, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, which has taken many forms through the years, but this was the original implementation of the MCSE. So it consisted of 6 different Microsoft certification exams, all of them hard. So it took a number of months. Can you imagine 6 different certifications you have to take to get that cert? So that's what I did. I took all 6 of those, earned the certification. I might have been able to clep out of one of those because I think they took the CNX to replace it. But in any case, I had to take 6 of those, pass 6 different exams to earn my MCSE. So at that point, I was working for a network management company, one that dealt with protocol analysis and network security, called Network General. They are no longer around. They have been acquired. Ultimately, they were acquired by McAfee and then later on acquired by NetScout. So they're now NetScout. All the old sniffer products are NetScout products. At that time, we were moving, when I worked at Network Associates, which is the name when McAfee bought us, there was a huge influx of security. We bought a firewall. We bought intrusion prevention products. We had tons of antivirus. We were really on the security side. And so they came to me and said, well, you've done all this protocol analysis. Now you need to get certified in security. I'm like, well, gosh, where do I start? What's a good entry-level security cert? And they go, Security Plus. Like, okay, I'll go take Security Plus. So that was my first CompTIA certification, was Security Plus, because I was working in a role that required I have a knowledge in IT security, and much more knowledge than I had at the time. And we were, firewalls were relatively new at this level. and the things they could do. That was a proxy-based application level firewall that we had. And then IPS was relatively new. Well, I learned everything I needed to know about IPS. So these were concepts in Security Plus. It made perfect sense. And after taking that, I thought, well, let me go get Network Plus. Since I have a strong background in networking, that was when I really didn't have to study that much, but I did need to study the things I didn't already have a good knowledge of. And at that point, I realized there's a need to have more training on these technologies. There's a need to have more people familiar with these technologies. So I wanted to take my A+ so that I could create some courses around A+ technologies. So that's sort of where all this kind of started, was that world of this. And that's why I took Security Plus first, then Network Plus, then A+. So at that point, okay, now I've got Security Plus in my pocket. I would probably not tell people, well, go make sure you take your Network Plus, even though that's what I did. You should take whatever certification makes sense for you. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. What does your career path need to look like? What would you like your career path to look like? What technologies are interesting for you? You should work along those lines too, to be able to really understand it. So that's what I would tell anybody is, where do you go after Security Plus? I don't know. What do you want to do? Do you want to do more security? Maybe we go get a higher level security certification. We certainly have options there from CompTIA. There are third-party certifications like ISC² has a lot of great security certifications. That might be a good next step. Maybe it's certifications that are specific to security, but particular products. Maybe you go get a Palo Alto Networks firewall certification because you want to interview at a company that has Palo Alto Networks firewalls. Makes perfect sense, but that may not be the path for everyone else. So when I tell people you're getting a cert commonly based on the need to get a job or get a better job or get a specific job in that particular case. So you go after the path that makes sense for where you want to go. And your path is going to be very different than somebody else's. Some people just like to collect certs. They just get one cert after another, and that's fine too. You're building your own personal knowledge of these technologies. Do you have a goal about what you're going to do with that cert? Maybe not right now, but later on, there may be a job opening somewhere where they're looking for somebody that has a CISSP. And you got your CISSP. All right, there's your opportunity. We often say that luck is really the result of a lot of preparation. And there's some truth to that, is that when that job offer comes along and they say, we're only hiring someone who has a CISSP, you can say, I've already done the work there. I already have my CISSP. I already have my Security Plus, or I already have my Palo Alto Networks certified systems engineer. So you've got that in your pocket. Now you can use that to get the job or get the better job. That's your goal. That's your direction. I can't answer that for you. I have no knowledge of what you like. I don't know what your next steps are. I don't know about the opportunities that are available in your particular area, your neck of the woods. So this is different depending on who I talk to, where they live in the world, and what their own personal requirements or needs or interests are. That's what you should focus on. I think that's important too. I think Let's Play is giving me a little bit of a hassle here. What are you trying to say? He asks, she asks, they ask, Professor, do you study 16 hours a day? No, I do not. Well, in some ways I sort of do. Most of the time I'm creating content when I'm in here. So I'm either on a live stream, here we are, or I'm writing a different book. I'm building another course. I'm writing pop quizzes for the week or month. I'm building out something else on my website to make things easier to find or to make it easier to hunt down this material. So for a good example, this past week, I added the start page for Security Plus. You know, there's things I'm looking at on my site that could be easier or better or show you everything that's available. That's a good example of that. So no, I don't study 16 hours a day. I have a good work day, and then at the end of the day, I try not to do much work, but there's always something involved with work. It's quite an online thing that we've created here, and there's a lot of moving parts, and I just have to make sure that we keep all the moving parts within the circle. So I'm constantly sort of keeping the circle closed, kind of grouping everything. Oh, there's one got away. It's like herding cats. So I try to herd the cats, and does not take the 16 hours a day, thankfully. It's more of a scenario where I am focusing on how do I make sure you're getting the information you need, that it is in a form that's easy to find, that we're constantly updating that information. So those are important too. And I really focus on that. There was a question earlier about Security Plus. It might be a good idea to bring up the presentation, the slide about this again, just so everybody is aware of this and we can kind of talk through why this is important. This is about the SY0-601. This comes up from time to time. This is a common question when we're getting close to the end of a life cycle with one particular version of a certification exam. And this one is for the SY0-601. As I mentioned earlier in the study group, it was released on November the 12th of 2020. It's estimated to retire somewhere around May, June, July-ish of 2024. We still aren't sure of the exact date, but it's somewhere in there. And I think that's a pretty good one to work towards. The exams are usually available for about 3.5 years after their release date. Traditionally, that's what it has been. So May 2024 is probably pretty good. It's probably going to be a little bit different than that. Something happened in the last 3 years that caused a lot of upheaval in the scheduling. So it's important that we watch what happens with that, but I can't imagine it would be any time before May of 2024. In fact, I suspect it's going to be after May of 2024. But May, I think, is a good number. So if you're busy studying for your SY0-601 exam, make sure you study and pass the exam before May of 2024. Now, what will probably happen is, this came out in November 12th of 2020. I would think in November of this year, we may see an SY0-701 exam objectives appear. They may release and have that exam available for you to take. But here's the problem, is that when they release a new version of the exam objectives change. Sometimes they change a little bit, 20%, 30% different. When they went between the 501 and 601, 50% of the exam was different, brand new. So it was a huge undertaking for someone who has built Security Plus courses since the 301 series. This was the biggest, longest, broadest, largest set of objectives we've ever had to deal with Security Plus. So I tell people, even if an exam was to come out at the end of this year, November, December timeframe, and they came out with a 701, you're not going to take it this year because we still have to create books for that exam. I have to create a new course for the 701 exam. I have to create new course notes. I have to create new practice exams. I have to create videos for the website. All of this is brand new and it takes time. So even if they come out with a new version of the exam, I highly, highly recommend that you take the 601 as long as you possibly can because there's so much study material available. And in the world of security, we don't have that much that changes from every 3 years to 3 years. Will there be new topics? Of course there will. But whether you pass a 601 exam or a 701 exam, the end result is a Security Plus certification. And the Security Plus certification doesn't have a version number. It's just Security Plus. And in fact, you'll probably never take a Security Plus exam again. Once you're certified, you'll just renew it every 3 years. So there could be someone who is Security Plus certified today as we sit here who might have taken their first Security Plus exam 10 years ago. But they've simply renewed it over and over every 3 years. They've renewed their certification. And if there's a job available and they need someone Security Plus certified, they are just as Security Plus certified as somebody who passes their 601 exam today. So it doesn't matter which one you're working with. It doesn't matter which exam you take. Just pass your Security Plus exam and get the certification, put it in your pocket. Having a cert in your pocket is so much more important than not. Some people will say, I'm going to wait and take the new exam. Huge mistake. Because while you're waiting to take the new exam, other people are going out and passing their 601 exam and getting Security Plus certified and applying to the jobs and getting the jobs that you could have had already had you gotten Security Plus certified. You're setting yourself up for failure by waiting. Don't ever wait. Always take the exams that are available. Obviously, as we get closer to the retirement date, you'll have to make a decision on which version that one happens to be. And that's why I tell you to be very knowledgeable of when that retirement date is so you can make those changes, you can make those plans, and know which one you want to do. Pretty important. Here's one that's not really a security question, but still a great question from Taha, who says, what do you think about Raspberry Pi? I love these little system on a chip implementations, SoC. I guess there is a Security Plus tie back to this. In fact, I've got in my mind an idea of creating a health check, a network health check app, or really using a utility to build an ongoing network health check using a Raspberry Pi, Linux, and something like vaping. And I don't mean like vaping like smoking. I mean, there's a tool called Vaping. Of course, it plays off the term vaping, but it's a utility very similar to CompTIA. It's like an RRD stored database where you can monitor the network, store that data, and then present it as graphs. And I would love to have one of those for my network, because I think it'd be really great to be able to monitor my ISP. I just love that idea of monitoring my ISP. And I used to use smoke ping. Interestingly, that's sort of why vaping was the natural progression to smoke ping. But vaping is such a good front end to this. I think there is a demo that I can run of this. One moment, please. I'm going to pull this up just so you can get a perspective of what this is. I just love these little utilities and being able to find this information. I will find the vaping demo server. There's got to be one out here. It's on alternative to smoke ping. Here we go. So this is good enough. This is a presentation that they put together on vaping. There it is. So a healthy alternative to smoke ping. It certainly is. So they have these alternatives that are there. Here are the real-time demos. I'm going to just click on one of these because they work pretty well. Look at this. This is beautiful. Let's make it a little bit. Can we make it bigger? I guess not. Let me make the graph a little bigger. So this is looking at, this one happens to look at Cloudflare, the pinging to Cloudflare, Google DNS, Level 3, OpenDNS, and Quad 9. Those are pretty powerful and well-known established providers of network traffic, and it's doing pings out to that every few seconds. And so we're able to get a really nice overview of how those particular network connections are working. These are all on the same graph. Here's one that shows kind of a different breakdown across different providers. That's some good stuff right there. So imagine we've had some challenges in the last few months with uptime and availability of our network, but where's the problem really happening? Is it happening on my local provider? Is it happening somewhere in the core of the network? Well, this would be a great tool to put on a Raspberry Pi and just have it constantly running and constantly evaluating what's happening. And if you have outages with your ISP, you know how difficult it is to talk to the ISP and try to explain to them what you're seeing. But if you have documentation that says, here's where the problems are occurring and when, and I've got an outage on this date and time for 62 seconds. There was an outage on this date and time for 5 minutes. There was an outage at this date and time, and we were able to get this far and then ran into a problem. It's almost like having a trace route ping constantly happening, constantly logging. It's fast, it's efficient, and it gives me some great presentations of data that I can show to someone else and say, here's where the problems are. You need to fix this. That's valuable for what I do. That's super valuable. So that's the next thing. Now, my problem, though, I sort of wanted to do this recently. I wanted to grab a Raspberry Pi and get this up and running. Can't find them. They're just not available. The market, everybody bought them up. It's hard to find one. So that's my problem right now, is just getting a system on a chip that I could use to do that with. But eventually I will get one, and I will set it up and we'll run it and make that happen. But I love the idea of running those. So I think it's just it's interesting. It's a lot of fun. You learn more about the network. You learn more about Linux. You learn more about system on a chip. That's kind of fits into the question that Adrian asks, which is, what kind of hands-on experience can we get before getting a job? There you go. Go do that. Go grab Linux. Doesn't have to be a Raspberry Pi. Load up a VM, run Linux, load vaping or CompTIA or SmokePing or any one of those, and then explain to someone else when you're sitting in that job interview, oh, well, guess what I did last weekend? I loaded up SmokePing. I loaded up vaping. I loaded up CompTIA. Do you guys use CompTIA? Do you have some type of network management system? Do you track statistics? Well, here's what I did. And you can talk to them about, I installed Debian, or I installed CentOS, or I installed Ubuntu, and then I installed this application, and I ran into problems. I often tell you, when you're doing these tasks, you're hoping for a problem to occur, because when you have a problem, you get a chance to troubleshoot it and fix it, and then you have a story. And when you're putting together these projects, you want stories, because when you go into an interview, you're the one who needs to be talking. I don't know if you realize this. You're not there to listen to them. They're there to listen to you, and you need some stories in your back pocket. And so anything that they ask about, you can redirect into, tell me about a time when you had a problem and you had to fix it. Let me tell you about something I did last weekend. Tell me about a time when you had to implement some type of monitoring system. Let me tell you what I did last weekend. Those are the stories. And more importantly, you can tell them, I installed it and then I ran into this problem. And I really had to find out what that was. I checked the normal forums. Nobody had seen that, or I found a mention of it in a separate Discord. I got with some folks that had done some development. I looked through the code, whatever it happened to be, and you can explain how you solved the issue and got back up and running. And, oh, would you like to see it? I've got it right here on my tablet. Here's the thing I'm running at home. There you go. That's a great conversation. If somebody had done that, I've interviewed a lot of people, by the way, as a SE manager. If someone had just sat down and given me stories in the middle of the presentation, it would have been amazing that I could have some practical knowledge with the questions that I'm asking, because I don't know what they've done. I don't know what their experiences are. I don't know what their knowledge is. But in the process of telling the story, you are effectively explaining to someone what you know, what your experiences are. And that's very valuable for someone who's doing a hiring and trying to make a hiring decision. Other people aren't going to have the story. On the YouTube video description of this video, there is a link to the how to get a job in IT with no experience. And in that link, I give you some more things that you can do in your home lab. I give you some examples. For instance, if you're applying for a Windows position or a help desk position, you need to install Active Directory, build out an Active Directory infrastructure, and start using Active Directory to change passwords, to set up a login script, to do a folder redirection, which, by the way, that's back in your A+ days. That's what's on A+ right now. So if you ever need, how do you do that? There's A+ videos and other training materials that you can access to do exactly that. And then you can walk into this job and say, oh, I set up Active Directory in a VM this weekend. Here's what I did. I downloaded the demo version of Server 2022, 2020, whatever you're running. I loaded this version of Microsoft Server, and then I created a VM of Windows 10 or Windows 11. I added that machine to the VM, but it didn't work. When I tried to add it to the VM, tried to add it to Active Directory, it gave me an error. And then I realized, and I'm not going to tell you how to fix it, because this is a common problem when you're trying to integrate Active Directory and VMs for the first time. There's a challenge doing that, really just a challenge in general. It doesn't even have to be with VMs. But what's the challenge? What's the process? How do you fix it? How do you find it? And then how do you fix it? Well, that's up to you. That's one example. Another one is if you're going into a networking or security job, why don't you install an open source security tool? Why don't you load up pfSense? Why don't you load up an Untangle? That's a type of firewall, an Untangle firewall. and get those firewalls running. And then maybe on top of pfSense, load up Snort. So you have an IPS. So now you've got firewall experience, an IPS experience in your home lab. Set it up to your home lab setup, maybe into your internet connection. Maybe it becomes your internet firewall for a day or two, or maybe the internet firewall in your lab. And you now can do all kinds of things, and you're going to run into problems, and you're going to see weird things in the log. And you can tell people, I saw the strangest thing come across the log. Here's what I found. And then I started diving into it. And it turns out it was this after doing the research. Well, there's your story. That's what you need as a story. It's not just hands-on experience, because you do need hands-on experience. Everything we do is sort of hands-on experience. And so that's the real key, is finding something that interests you, that you can easily implement in a virtual machine on your existing system, and start using it and create these stories of what you want to do. The link to the video on how to get a job in IT with no experience is in the YouTube video description of this video, of all of the most recent videos that I do for the study groups. So if it's a study group video you're watching, go look at the YouTube video description. And in there's a bunch of links to different things that I always talk about. How to get a job in IT with no experience is one of those things I always talk about. It's 30 minutes long. It's a big video, but like all of my videos, it is just chock full of information. There's no dead air. I'm always telling you something. So I think I tried to make them that way. So you're not wasting your time on that 30 minutes. Set it to 1.5 and 2x speed. Just get through it. But there's a lot of good stuff there. And it does give you some other tips and tricks about what can you do to give yourself a heads up when you're planning to take your exam. Well, there are some things I put in there that could be the difference between you getting the job and not getting the job. This is a good place to talk about. Jacob says, your resources have helped me get A+. Then my first IT job in 2021, Network Plus last year, and just 20 minutes ago, got Security Plus. How's that? That was the best study group ever, if that's how it went. I have a feeling you missed the first part of the study group. Thank you for your continued guidance, my IT training guru. I don't know about the guru part, but we were more than happy to be alongside you there during your studies. Congratulations on your Security Plus, as well as your Network Plus, your A+, and all the other things you're doing. This is the stories we like to hear. These are the things we want you to be able to do. The capabilities are there. The resources are available to you, but it does take you committing to use those resources and applying those resources to learn everything you need to learn to pass that certification exam. And I'm one of those rare people in this training world that I live in who've done this for a living and that understand the value of certifications and can be the person that tells you, all those people that tell you certifications are worthless have never gotten the certification. They've never used a certification that they've gotten. But I can tell you, being in the industry and working through it, they make a difference, not just to getting a job or getting a better job, but you become smarter. You know more about these technologies now, and you're able to use that technology throughout your career. Microsoft Windows hasn't changed in forever. They changed the GUI. There's a little bit underneath, but Active Directory today is the same Active Directory we were using 20 years ago. So the instant you make a clicking connection with these, you say, oh, that's how that technology works. Well, guess what? You're able to use that knowledge throughout your career. And now, 10 years from now, when an Active Directory question comes up, when you're working for a cybersecurity company and they need to integrate their firewall with an Active Directory so that they can create firewall rules that aren't addressed to an IP address, but instead addressing a Windows group, you know how to do that already. You don't need to know a background of Active Directory. You already have it. You don't need to understand what's going on behind the scenes. You already know about that. You don't have to understand how the DNS query works to find the Active Directory server. You already know all of that. So that's the real value in my mind, is that you're taking this knowledge and applying it today for kind of the short-term view of the world that we have of, can I just get the next job? Can I just get the next better job? But in reality, these are tools that you're going to have in your toolbox for anything you do in IT going forward. And ultimately, I think that's the most valuable part of these is, yes, they will help me today get that job, but more importantly, they're going to help me the rest of my career continue to grow and continue to be valuable in this industry. And I think that's the most important part too. So hopefully that's given you some perspective on IT and certifications and things you need to know for Security Plus. Maybe that positions you well also for your Security Plus exam. That I think that's also a pretty good place to kind of stop our live stream for today. Thank you for being here in this first hour and hanging out with us and answering questions. And hundreds of you stuck around for the after show. I'm looking at the analytics here. You folks are amazing. Thank you so much for your participation and being here and your questions. And it really is something that helps keep motivating us to do even more on our site. We love doing these live streams. Thank you so much for all of that. We have more live streams coming next month. Stick around for those. We've got them on our calendar, and we'll be adding even all brand new questions. So come back next month. We'll do even more of that. In the meantime, we'll be over on Discord. We'd love for you to join us, professormesser.com/Discord. If you like this video, we would love it if you would, I think the kids say to smash the button. I think you should smash the button. I think that's an important thing. Hit thumbs up if you really like it. It really does help us quite a bit. We work very closely with our associates over on YouTube. They like to see the numbers when you hit the thumbs up. And if you'd like to subscribe to our channel, I'd just be over the moon at professormesser.com/YouTube. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.